Hello, everyone. Happy International Dyslexia Awareness Day. Happy International Dyslexia Awareness Day. Today, I am so excited, and it's a privilege to be with you once again after our last week's session. This is Dyslexia Global Conversation, which is brought to you by the Africa Dyslexia Organization. And it's my pleasure to host this conversation because today's conversation has never happened before, where you're going to have on one screen 4 people who are dyslexic. And very soon I'm going to bring them over here so that we can share our journey with dyslexia with you and you can learn a thing or two. I will encourage you, your friends who are not here, share the link with them so that they can come on and watch this conversation with you. This conversation is very important for educators, parents, and the general public altogether. So I invite you to please call your people. We also ask you to put in your questions. If you have any questions in the comments, let us know where you are connecting from. It's Dyslexia Awareness Month, but 8th of October is dedicated as World Dyslexia Day. I wish many years ago, like 20 years ago, there was an awareness like this, because if it was, probably my story would have been different. But it's okay. We are all here to change the narratives so that no child will go through what we went through, and tell you also the positive side, we being dyslexic, what it has turned us into. So I'm going to bring on the screen my wonderful speakers, Surama King, who is an experiential learning expert from Tema International School, Tanisha, who is a business strategist and a business coach. She's an educator. Aaron, who is a former Tesla Motors executive and also global sustainability consultant. So without much ado, please keep in your comments coming. Let us know which country you're connecting from, where you're connecting from. Give us your questions. I'm going to bring my guest here into the studio. Thank you. Hello, fellow dyslexics. How are you doing today?
Hey, Pam.
Good. Great, thank you.
Awesome,
Great
awesome.
and grateful.
Awesome. So today is World Dyslexia Day. The entire Dyslexia Awareness Month is October, but today is dedicated where everyone around the world that champions anything regarding dyslexia celebrates this day. And for us at Africa Dyslexia Organization, we are very happy and privileged to have you, our friends, who care so much about changing the narratives on the African continent or anywhere about dyslexia, because people view dyslexia in certain ways when it comes to our community. When a child is not doing well, meaning a child is blockheaded, meaning a child is stupid, a child is lazy, and all of you are dyslexics. So my question to you is, and I will start with Aaron. Aaron, how was growing up for you? What did you go through? And at what age did you know that you are dyslexic?
Oh, well, Rosie, thank you so much for this. It's a pleasure meeting you, ladies. It's nice knowing that that there's intelligent people out that I know personally. Again, I know a lot of people who are dyslexic that are famous, but for us to be able to connect like this, we're just some regular people with regular people problems and have dealt with this. It's nice to know that there's that support out there for us. So thank you for this platform. Growing up for me wasn't, you know. I think back, I had a lot of issues, a lot of learning disabilities, lot more than just being dyslexic. And I grew up in the 60s and 70s, so there really wasn't a lot of support for, children like myself, having a speech problem. I mean, I had a lot of issues, learning wise. Thank God I didn't have a situation where my father or adults around me thought I was lazy, because I wasn't a very good student, because I was not a very good student. I think that my positive attitude was what really got me through, my younger years. But I did struggle at learning, reading, writing, just the normal stuff, the stuff that, again, we take for granted. I'm saying we don't take for granted. I think a lot of people out here who don't understand what it is to be dyslexic, pronouncing certain words, certain words that we avoid because we have no clue on how to even pronounce the word because we didn't learn it when we were younger. I've struggled my whole life, just I avoid certain certain words that I just cannot pronounce. I mean, someone will tell me the word 18 times, and 18 times I'll say it right, and then the 19th time I won't even have a clue on how to say it. I mean, that's the challenge that we did. I get everybody's nodding their head. You know what I'm talking about. So again, for me, childhood was difficult on the learning part, and like I said, the only thing saved me was my confidence, my ability to block out the fact that I am not like all the other children, and that I knew that I would be successful. And when Rosie asked me when I found out, really, I keep going back and forth, but I believe it was in 2018 is when I got tested. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was 2018. So I'm 50, 50, 52, 53 years old when I found out. And when I did find out, it was like the light bulb cut on. It was like, oh my God, I could breathe now. Now I understand why I struggle at writing emails, why I struggle at when I'm putting a proposal together, I got to read it 47 times to make sure that I spelled the right or forgot a word. You know what I mean? There's a word, the whole sentence is all blown up because I forgot one freaking word in there. People are like, what the hell are you talking about? So for me, it was a few years ago. I mean, it was, like I said, I think I was 52 or 53. I'm 57. I'll be 58, this month, actually. My birthday's this month. So, it was later on that when I found out, like a lot of other people that I know too, that recently that found out, that they were diagnosed later. But yeah, it was later in life. And, thank God that I did figure it out, because now the mission is to try to help as many people as we possibly can, young and old, to to identify the fact that hey, just because you're dyslexic, it's not a bad thing. To me, it's a superpower, because I've been able to excel by having all that confusion, all that crazy stuff going around in my head, trying to figure this out, where it made me focus on, if I'm going to be successful, even with all the stuff going on in my head, I have to be able to figure things out. And I'm very good at figuring things out. That's why my company's name, Greener Sustainable Solution, because I come up with solutions to people's problems. And I know that it has to do with the fact that I'm dyslexic. So again, childhood, so, but I think that, being dyslexic is helped me to a certain extent, but it really, as I found out what I really had, is just open up a bunch of different windows for me now. And I'm excited. I'm excited for what you're doing. I'm excited the ladies are here. I want to hear your story. But yeah, that's how my childhood was. And again, that's when I found out when I was dyslexic.
Wow. Thank you so much, Aaron. And like, it's the moment you find, especially adults who find out later, it's like the moment you find out, then certain things make sense as to why you do certain things in different ways. And absolutely, I felt the same when I found out to be dyslexic. I'm like, oh, so that's why I'm very good at this, and that's why I'm not good at this, and it makes sense, and it's okay.
Yeah.
But then what is not okay is the experiences we had to go through until the day that we found out that we are dyslexic. And so thank you for sharing that. We'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Tanisha, can you tell us about your experience with dyslexia? How was your journey from your childhood till now? What time did you find out to be dyslexic, and how has it been for you?
So I actually even known I was dyslexic for 31 years. I found out when I was 7. I didn't find out, my grandmother did, because we were doing like learning to, writing certain sentences. I think we were telling stories or something, and I had written, I like cats and dogs. And I had this habit that my teacher had noticed, where if the end of the last letter on the last word and the first letter on the next word are the same, I never used to split the words. So it was, and then she'd ask me all the time, what does it say? And I'd be like, I like cats and dogs. She's like, it doesn't say I like cats and dogs. It says I like cats and dogs. Right? So it's like, that's not a word. You have to put a space. You have to put the D twice. And I was sure I was doing it correctly. So that particular issue was why she called my grandmother in, because I grew up with my grandmother, who's also a headmistress. So a Ghanaian headmistress at that. But yeah, so that's how my grandmother found out. But I don't think that, I think that I was lucky because my grandma was a headmistress. She was so passionate about education. She always used to just get me to read anyway after school. It was kind of her habit. I'd get home from school. I'd have to sit, read, eat some fruits, wait for her to do whatever chores she was doing. And then when, she was done with what she was doing, and we would have dinner. So I had this system. In fact, that's why I'm always surrounded by books. Some of these books are actually my childhood books from me, literally like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, because I just love them so much. But that's actually how I found out. And, a lot of people say to me, oh, so you must have found it easier. No, I mean, I was so anxious about words and anything to do with words that I would literally cause so much distraction in the class intentionally, just to distract from anything. I focused a lot in maths. I was excellent in maths. In fact, I was actually an A student the whole way, but with some issues, if that makes sense. So I was top in maths because that was how I could win. Numbers were easier because I don't have dyscalculia, so I would escape with the numbers. But when I finished college, instead of me to go to university after doing my A-levels, I was so anxious. I just did more A-levels. Then I went to art school. Then I went to film school. Then I just went to work. And I didn't return back to try and attempt university till I was 26.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy because I'm 38 now, and I became one of the youngest deans, like university deans, when I was 35.
Wow.
So associate dean, and it's crazy because I was running away from words because of how the words made me feel, my lack of understanding made me feel, the way people made me feel, even though I already knew what the problem was. And I'll give you a good example. When I went to university when I was 26, I decided to study business management with oil and gas. Don't even ask me why. I just wanted to study the hardest thing because I was like, I'm a grown-up. I'm not studying basic topics. And I was in an exam. You mentioned earlier, Aaron, spelling the. I was in an exam about petrol filling stations, and I couldn't spell it.
Yeah.
I could not spell it. And I ended up getting in trouble because when someone came by and I, like, the people that walk through the aisles, and I was like, can you tell me how to spell it? Spell it. And he was like, what is it? And I was like, no, it. He's like, yeah, but what is it? And then because the word it is such a stupid word. So he got annoyed with me. And I mean, he knew he was in because I have extra time. I always make sure I have all the provisions and stuff. But he got so annoyed with me that he was being a bit loud. And so because he was being loud, the head assessor came up to me and was like, I should stop what I'm doing. And then she was like, what's the problem? And I was like, I'm just asking him how to spell it. And she was like, what is it? And everyone wanted to know. So,
my God.
I burst out crying. I got up and left. I just cried and left. I was like, I've said clearly what it is I need to help to spell. And I left. And then I was in another room crying, and one of the assessors came in and was like, what is actually the problem here? And I said, I am trying to say this sentence. And then, and I said the sentence, but I can't figure out how to spell it. And she was like, oh, you just want to spell it? And I was like, yes, IT. Thank you. And that moment made me kind of like really stand out amongst all the teachers and lecturers, because they had taken for granted how much extra work I do behind the scenes to be a first-class student. And they never had the opportunity to experience how confusing it can be for me sometimes for something I know what's how to do. But it was good, it was a really good experience. And it's actually how I got my job as a lecturer when I finished. But it's not easy at all. And it's not easier in any way, shape or form. And especially not easier when you work in executive roles, when you work with leaders, because they have such a short tolerance for typos. But I have such a high, percentage and chance of making a typo. So it's been really interesting. I do love the opportunities that artificial intelligence and speech to text give nowadays. Yes. But it was a real struggle, right? It was a real struggle.
Yes.
Yeah,
wow.
And it's mainly getting what's in your head onto paper. It's what's in your head is beautiful.
Yes.
But getting it on paper sometimes is just the worst.
I know. Yes.
Wow, wow. Yes, what is in our head is beautiful because sometimes I marveled about the things I think about. Like even for example, when I look at Africa Dyslexia Organization and you see in my head, you might think like I'm going to build a whole city for Africa Dyslexia Organization with every vision of how I want it to be. But ask me to put it on paper. No.
Yeah.
No.
You know, can I just chip in actually? Because literally asking me to put it on paper has made me throw away so many opportunities. Because I've thought about it for a second and I thought, you know what? The range of projects, people, and opportunities I've had in my life, there is a certain group of people who really want to buy into the idea and understand the idea, have a long conversation, and then are like, okay, cool, let's put something together in terms of what we are thinking. And then there's this other school of people who are only half listening, so they're not really focused, but they're so obsessed with words that they'll tell me to go through the chore of putting something on paper when I can tell they're not going to read it.
Yeah.
And the thought of, you know what, will they possibly read it? And if they won't, they don't know the stress I'm going to go through to make this perfect for them. So sometimes I just leave the opportunity and I say, you know, it's okay. It's fine.
I understand that.
I totally get that.
It has happened to me several times. There are so many opportunities I see that I really want to apply, but they don't have any version where a dyslexic person like me can just do a video and send it to them as my application and move on. We'll come back to this conversation. Let's go to Surama King to listen about her journey of growing up and being dyslexic. When did she find out to be dyslexic? Let's hear from you, Surama.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And this opportunity really warms my heart because looking back, there was no conversation about dyslexia. And if there was any conversation, was to simply make us feel that we're really not wanted. You know, there was no place for us on any table to talk or to even understand ourselves. So being here in Ghana today, you know, 22 years after I arrived here and being in the midst of other people who just sound like me or look like me or have experiences very similar to mine, is really inspiring. Well done for all you're doing, Rosaline. Well, I grew up in Brazil. I'm Brazilian, and growing up as a mixed race girl, you know, colored girl and dyslexic, it was like a double, double trouble, you know. Why? Because one, I grew up in a school, I went to a Catholic school and majority white children, you know, and you know, schools, how they are. There's this idea or this perception of the best people are the ones who get the grades, you know. And you have people who don't even go to class. I had a friend who didn't even attend classes. He had this issue of, you know, being absent. But when he sits down to write the exams, he was always the top of the class. And I had to work extra hard. I had to work more than everyone to present something, you know, especially when it came to reading, presentation, and all that. And in all schools, we have the top of the list or we have the bottom of the list. People don't really pay attention to those who are the bottom. Actually, they do, you know, to mock or to criticize, especially here in Ghana. I think here there's a huge emphasis on merit lists, and there's schools which still do probation lists, which I think is the worst thing you can go do to any child. But I was very fortunate, on the other hand, to find teachers. I was extremely blessed in my journey to find teachers who were empathetic, you know, who they lent a helping hand to me. They realized that there's something special about her, but they couldn't really understand at the time. I also didn't know. I was dyslexic, but I could do good work if I had time. I could say the words well if I had time, if I kind of almost draw the word or visualize the word, or if I was prepared. I could do anything that was hands-on. I was the best on stage. You give me a character and tell me I need to perform it. If I understood what the character was, I will be the best you could ever have. Put me in a room that we're going to do something, we're creating something out of anything. I was excellent in that. But the moment you sit me in an exam room, it was the worst moment for me. I recall myself throwing up, crying a lot, being sick before exams, because just sitting there and writing those long essays was like a punishment. I had everything on my mind. My mind was actually very busy. I was the wonder child. I could sit in class because I could not really follow things with the teacher. Writing from the board was punishment for me. I had a very challenging handwriting, and following up with others who could write and do those little notes and color them, it was not really my thing. I'll write 3 to 4 words and that's it. My brain could not function anymore. And so I had to deal with all of that. And yes, was frustrating, but at the same time, I think I developed resilience, and I had those adults in the room who had a kind of special attention to me. There were some of them who really thought that, no, I need to pay attention to Surama and she's going to do great things. And they are also the reason why growing up, after I could not really fit in the system to write the exams to go to university. In Brazil, you still write some extensive 3 days paper to get a place in university today. I hope it changed. So those extensive writings never get me there. So I went to teachers college. I did other things that allowed me in a shorter time to accomplish something and be in the system, But it was those teachers who made me see that there's so many other young people like me, and I just want to be that. I want to be that person in the room, in the school community, that I have the ears, I have the eyes for children that are not on top of that list. The children who, if they're not given the right opportunities and we don't create a safe space for them to demonstrate their strengths, they are going to really fail. And I come from Brazil, a country that we have a lot of social issues, being drugs, and drugs has been one of the biggest. So there were children just like me who end up in the streets, especially the Black ones, especially the ones who didn't come from homes that were very privileged. And to see them going the other road just because they didn't have a chance, or someone who held their hands and could acknowledge and validate their strengths. Because dyslexic, we have our challenges, but we have great strengths, creative thinking, the ability to do things, and others, which I believe we'll talk about as we go on. So it was those people in the room that paid attention to me. So I promised myself that I will be that person in the room that look out for such children. And I knew I was dyslexic in that transition of, finding a path that I could really shine my purpose. And then being a mother, the early years of my firstborn son, who is dyslexic, in school, I could see myself in him. So it was then when I knew he was dyslexic, I was like, no, I need to learn more about this. And, I'm married with 3 wonderful children. They're adults now. 2 out of our 3 children are dyslexic, and my husband is dyslexic. So you can see that is an entire family of creatives. So a lot of questions came at that time in awakening, the ability to say, whoa, this is what it was. And if I knew, I could have helped myself better. When I talk to my 9-year-old Surama, I oftentimes tell her, I'm sorry. I wish I knew better. I could have helped you more. But there were good people there, so they helped me.
Wow. Yes, I'm always intrigued when I hear you talk about you and your family. Imagine in a family of 5 and 4 of them are. But you can see the amazing skills and creative that happens in this family. And if you go to Tama International School, the beautiful work Mrs. King is doing there is just amazing, and it just translates whatever she's doing. She's saying to us right here. Thank you so much for sharing your story. We have so many people connecting from Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria. All of them are here. The DPS family is here representing live, supporting. We have Janet also here, um, giving shout out to you, Tanisha. And so we're going to carry on our conversation. For me, I've heard all of your story and everything. And I also would say that Surama was actually a school owner who said something to my parent that really kind of set the tone to me, where my father told him that, oh, for Rosalie, I have no expectation of her. I'm just bringing her to this school. Just allow her to pass here for 3 years and she'll come out. And then at the end of the term, when he was coming for me, they told him, no, we think your child is good. We think she's good and she's going to be great. So you could understand the power of words and how powerful and impactful it has on people. And it is the same way positive words have impact on us to better our lives. The same way negative words can also affect people to just fall out. And rightly, like you said, there has been a lot of research that shows that, especially like in the US, a lot of people in prison are people that end up being dyslexic or having any form of learning challenges. So what that means is if we at this part of the world, if we don't do anything about how we support children in school, how we engage children in school, and we don't stop the mean words, that means we are sending our kids to that pathway. And so this conversation here is to really create awareness and show the strength that we all carry. Regardless of our learning profile, we are here today and we're going to talk about a little bit of what you all do. So it shows them that there is hope. For your child not doing well today doesn't mean that your child is not going to do well tomorrow. You have the opportunity now, listening and we sharing our experiences, to know that, oh, my child, if I give a score to this child will be good. And for teachers, you know that that child in your classroom who is not doing well, it doesn't mean that the child is not good. And I have a saying that every child is a star. Until we help that child to realize the star, you will damage the star in the child. So let's go around again, and I'll take it from Tanisha. Tony, you have had a fantastic career, like very young and almost at the academia level. Somebody who is dyslexic, you couldn't even spell it. IT.
It's not as simple as it sounds. Yeah, I'm sure all of you are not admitting that you have struggled to spell A.
I struggle to spell IS all the time. I struggle.
There you go.
Is it SI or what is it? Yes. So
yours. You and yours for me. You and yours. Those are tough, man. Block.
What about fight, light, tight, mind?
Yes, that's another one.
Right and right your right hand. See today, right and right. They are both right. What is it?
It's so funny. So let's go back. We have fantastic comments there. People are giving shout out to us. I'll come back to it. But please send us questions, because the questions also help us to be more engaged with you. Send us questions and let's carry on. But let's go back to Tanisha. How did you get into that position? And with all that you're doing today, like yesterday, I was at your program, the Learn program, and you were just on fire. And I was sitting there, I'm like, so this is dyslexic person. You design all your brochures, you do everything. How do you do these things?
It's not how, it's why. The question is not how.
Okay. Why?
So, I mean, especially with my events, I literally want to be able to travel a bit more. But I've gone and put 5 events a month into the calendar to support female entrepreneurs. which has really kind of done me over because in order for me to be able to get my team to do it, I have to get my systems and processes in order. I know this because I'm the executive coach. But the problem is getting those systems and processes in order previously meant that I needed to write systems and processes, right? I needed to write those all out clearly for the left brain people. But I'm a right brain dyslexic. There are left brain dyslexics, but I'm done over because I'm both right brain and dyslexic. So I need to draw you the instructions, right? And I can't do that. So I am actually really able, and I think this is what has been able to get me my kind of executive roles, is that I'm really good at communicating a vision by leading by example in the workplace. So I literally live through the innovation and iteration processes with staff. In the world of tech, we call it building in public, but I'll do that with my team so that, you know, from the first ever brunch and learn that we ever had, or event I've ever had in my life, let alone brunch and learn, I learned some things and then I communicate to my team. So I'm very serious about meetings. Every day we have a morning meeting at 9. I have to be able to talk to you all. Now they do have to write and log and all that stuff. And I'll tell you the truth, and as much as I've got problems with my words, if I read your words, I know if there's a mistake in there. Just what is wrong with that? I can spot other people's mistakes, right? It's a problem. So yeah, so it's not like how I do it, it's why. It's because I communicate better in formats that up until this last 2 to 3 years, and I'm so grateful to the pandemic for forcing so many tech companies to create things for the educational and basically for the communication space, that I now have multimodal opportunities in order to communicate. So I can now communicate with really effective mind maps online. I can use this tool called Loom, which is a screen recorder, and puts a little video of me there and lets my mouse. So I can actually say, like someone can send me a PDF, I'll screen record back and say, look, this page here, this is wrong, this is bad, change this, do that. Or I can open Canva and I can redesign it myself. So it's really about why, you know. Same with our website. We have the Ladies Entrepreneurship Club website. It's amazing. Everyone that goes to it is like, wow, Tanisha, how did you do it? Yeah, I sat down and did it. Why? Because when I found the web designers, who I train web designers, by the way, when I found web designers and I wanted them to build it, they still wanted me to write them things. They wanted me to write them the phase by phase development that I wanted. They wanted me to write they just wanted me to write. And I was like, look, can I just give you pictures? So I literally went in PowerPoint, designed all the slides, like designed the website as slides, and then like did this whole, it was ridiculous to communicate. And I still have found so many communication barriers that I realized I'd already wasted so much time, I could figure out how to build it myself. And so I did. And again, that dyslexic strength, when we do it ourselves, we do it perfectly. So I used the tool called Elementor, and I was so good that Elementor contacted me because, you know, you could submit websites for like recognition. They're like, this is amazing. And they made me a trainer for Elementor. And I actually run Elementor UK's community of over 1,000 web developers, just because I couldn't get the words on paper to tell one web developer what to do for me. And I did it myself. So, and I think that's, you know, these are kind of personal experiences, but I think that is really how, exactly, you need to have meetings and you need to have executive staff. So I have 4 executive staff who follow me around, make notes, and ask me all day long, is there something you've forgotten to tell me? That's the key question they're supposed to ask me. Is there something you've forgotten to tell me? That's it, because I'm forgetting everything, right? So, so that's in the entrepreneurship world. I just do it. I do it myself. I role model it. And of course, now I have developers who manage my site for me, because now I've been able to show them the thing and they can continue to do it. But in the world of academia, I can tell you that was not easy, right? Because firstly, I am young relative to most deans. That's just true, right? I don't look like most deans, especially in the United Kingdom. I don't talk like them. I remember once one of my bosses asked me to reduce my use of colloquial language. And first of all, I was annoyed because I was like, what is colloquial? Can we not introduce new words into my life? But you know, it was just the weirdest thing. And when I look back, it was just she just felt like the way I speak and the way she speaks are totally different. But in my opinion, she spoke the wrong way, right? Because she's from up north. I had another person, you know, hear a rumor, because I was applying for master's degrees and Oxford University was one. Hear a rumor that I was applying for Oxford University, assume I was applying to teach, and take it upon themselves to come and tell me that that might be slightly overconfident of me. But I was applying for a master's. So of course, because I don't know about you guys, but the kind of dyslexic I am, I like a challenge. Hello. I like a challenge. So what did I do? I decided I was going to teach at Oxford. That's actually what I was going to do. And within a year, I was teaching an entrepreneurship bootcamp at Oxford for a whole bunch of young people to learn inside Oxford University. And I took the pictures, put it on my LinkedIn, just to clarify, I am not overconfident. In fact, I wasn't even going to do what you said I shouldn't do, but now you've said it, I'm going to do it. And I also took it upon myself. Her job was Associate Dean of Learning and Teaching. And at the time, I was only a lecturer. But I took it upon myself. I was like, if this woman has so much time to come and tell me about my life, then her job must give time. So I changed my angle of what I wanted to do with my academic career to become Associate Dean of Learning and Teaching. 2 years later, I was Associate Dean of Learning and Teaching. And I remember previously I was just a lecturer. And I didn't even start university till I was 26. And by the time she was doing this, I was like 32, 33. And now that she came in, she just brought herself into my life. I was like, is it, madam? I shall make your life my number one agenda. And I did. And the moment I was also Associate Dean of Learning and Teaching, I put it on my LinkedIn. And I rarely post on LinkedIn. I put it on my LinkedIn. I said, this one, dear, you shall find out that it has happened. So a lot of people try, in England, we also have this thing called Access to Work, which is a fund for people who are neurodiverse and have disabilities, of which hidden disabilities like learning disabilities are one. And a really good friend of mine, Liz, who you know, Rosaline, because Liz runs the UK kind of version of this, what she used to, she's now. Liz told me, she said, Tanisha, you're doing so much. You know you need help and you're paying all the stuff on your own. No, you need to apply for Access to Work. You need to get yourself some something to help you with all this help that you need. So I said, okay, and I applied. And the first application got rejected. But I had happened to make friends, because I'm friendly. So I happened to make friends with one of the people on the call center. So when I got rejected, I called the call center to try and ask to speak to him so he could explain to me why. But I got this lady, and you know what the lady said to me? She said, but madam, I'm sorry, I'm looking at your application and it says you're the deputy head of school, because at that time I was deputy head. And I said, yes. And she said, well, I'm not being weird on nothing. And she started going, I'm not being weird on nothing. But I don't understand how you can be both dyslexic and the deputy head of the university.
Wow.
And you know what I did?
Wow.
I just cried. I tell you, me and dyslexia, I cry a lot about this. Dyslexia makes me cry a lot. I swear.
Gosh, say it again, please. Oh my God.
Can you imagine? She can't understand how I'm both. So she can't understand that I work in a workplace that supports me as a dyslexic individual.
Wow.
She can't understand that I have friends and family who support me as a dyslexic individual. She can't understand that I will spend the 4 or 5 times she spends doing something so that I can have the career path that I want to have.
My goodness.
And she wants to tell me this so boldly on the phone. So I was so upset that I left it. And 2 days later, I called back again to try and get through to this man. And I told him what happened. And when he found out, luckily, he was empathetic. He looked back and he was like, actually, there must have been some discrimination there, because you do definitely qualify, because you are paying people to do personal work with you, to help you check your typos, help you write this. And that's what this fund is for. And so he approved it. And then, so for the last, for those years and stuff, I was able to get my Access to Work. But yeah, people have been very, very mean to me. Very mean. Very, very mean. But I think that for me with that, it's made me more resilient. Like I said, if people speak up to me and they say something to me, I see it usually as a challenge, as a personal challenge, that I need to do this so that they don't open their mouth and say that again. I don't do it for them. I do it for myself. But wherever they are, I make sure it's very public. Like I'll go as far as paying for the front page of the newspaper. I'll go that far, and I have done it.
Hardcore.
Yeah, I have done it, because I don't think it's fair at all to approach people while you don't know what it feels to be that person.
Yeah.
And criticize the thing that clearly, if it causes you distress on the external, it must cause us distress on the internal. So it has been very difficult. And it's not easy ever, I think. But I think it's made me very, very resilient, and it's made me very adventurous. And yeah, it just makes me try harder, really. Never happily, but I try harder anyway.
Yes.
I love that. You know what? The moment for me, and I'm sure all of us have that thing. I feel like the moment a dyslexic, whether knowing or not knowing, the moment you have that edge that you can do, you let nothing stop you. It's like, I don't care what you think about me. I am going to show you I'm able to do it. And this is the message we want to send to our young folks who have discovered they are dyslexic, or whether they are struggling with learning and they haven't even discovered. We want you to know that there's something that is embedded in you that is so greater than all the negative words they are saying about you. And so, if you're a parent out here, you have to take it upon yourself that you're going to be an advocate for your child. You're going to stand with your child and you're going to support your child. Don't let people be mean to them. Don't let anybody say worse. If a child come back from the school and say, Mom, Dad, a teacher said I am blockheaded or I'm lazy and they're teaching me and I'm not getting it, please march to the school and demand an explanation and report that teacher. Do not sit down. If you're an educator here, and if you're here, then I'm sure you have decided that you're going to support our dyslexic learners. And you are going to be a champion in your school. Please support our kids for us, whether they know they are dyslexic or that child who is muted in the class because of certain challenges, whether autistic or dyslexic, dyscalculia, whatever it is, support children, because nobody have I want to use the word that we all don't have any opportunity to demean any child's destiny. Because me, a teacher took their shoe and beat me in class because they were teaching me and I wasn't getting. How can you take your shoe and beat me? You get it. And look at Tanisha saying, like, you are angry because what? I'm dyslexic and I'm applying for this. I'm an executive. Like, you can't quantify because you want to say unpalatable words. Anyway, let me come back. Please, this is Dyslexia Global Conversation, and you are watching 4 Dyslexics on your screen right now. We are sharing our life experiences of growing up and either having one form of extreme learning challenge or mild learning challenge. We're using this to create awareness on Dyslexia Awareness Day. Thank you for joining us. Send in your comments, send in your questions, and please call your friends to be here. Share the link with other people. Let me go to DPS, baby. Mr. DPS, Aaron. And I call Aaron Mr. DPS because I'm going to ask him questions towards that. Aaron, I know your story, but people don't know the story in depth. When you were even in a special school, and that's what kind of baffled my mind, that even in the US, you were in a special school, but they didn't know you were dyslexic until about 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So how was the experience, and how did you manage to go through life and end up being a Tesla executive on sustainability? That baffles my mind, and I feel it's a great story for us to hear.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of, now in retrospect, thinking about my childhood and the classes, I was in special ed, and here in the United States, they make fun of kids in special ed. At least they did in the 60s and 70s. They used to always, they refer to us as short bus kids because the kids get bussed in on a small bus, So, if you were on the short bus, you're different. There's some issue, you had some issues. My issues were more, they didn't really focus on obviously at all dyslexia. Mine was more of a speech problem. And then I was in with really severely challenged children, so I'm a guy who's dyslexic, have a little speak problem, but I'm in with really like severely, children that are autistic. We didn't really call them autistic back in the day, but autistic children that need special, like really, really need special help. So I'm in with, a bunch of children that are my friends. So I these are like my homies. These are the kids that I resonated with because I saw them every single day, but they would get picked on and they'd be made fun of. And I was an athlete, kind of like, I wasn't a typical normal child that was in special ed, but I had a speech problem. So I had to deal with that. The toughest part was just not knowing why. Because even though I'm sitting in class and they're trying to teach you this, it's like, I have no idea why I can't get it. And I'm trying my hardest. So one of the things, and this is something that Rosie and I talked about, is that I had to figure this stuff out myself. It was like, I used to talk to myself, say, why can't I get this? Like, I'm sitting in class. I remember being in 5th grade. And I'm like thinking, why can't I get this? It doesn't compute to me. And one of the things that I had to do, and I don't know if this works for you guys, is that, when I write things down, and I read them over and over in my own words in the way that I can interpret what it means, that helps me out so much. It helps me understand, and again, it's my words. It's like if I couldn't say dyslexia. When I first met Rosie, I kept saying dyslexic something, and always I couldn't even say the word dyslexia. Dyslexia. Well, dyslexia. So my daughter's name Alexa. Okay, so I had to put Alexa with dyslexia for me to get it, which my daughter started cracking up. She's like, okay, if that's what you need, Dad. But that's what I would do. And I would equate words that I knew what it sounded like. Like I know Alexa sounds like dyslexia. So that's kind of how I was able to learn in my own way. Like I couldn't even tell the teachers, this is what I did. This is just when I take a test, this is what I would have to do. It's like, okay, that sounds like this. It sounds like that. That's why I wasn't a very good student, but I could get by. But what that allowed me to do is when I graduated from high school, I went to college one semester. I knew college was not for me. There was no way. I was a computer science person, and these guys were programming in these advanced languages. I could barely speak my language. I'm gonna try to speak a computer language. It's like it wasn't gonna work. But I dropped out of college. I started working for a company, a waste management company that sent me all over the world. I should say all over the country. I went to Alaska. And when I was in Alaska, I realized, I said, man, these guys that are making the big bucks, they don't have to lift heavy stuff and dig trenches and whatnot. What these guys were doing is they had a notebook and they were writing down chemicals, and they were packaging chemicals, and they were telling me to package the chemical, and all they were doing was just writing things down, and they were getting paid 3 times as much as I was getting paid. I was like, damn. I was like, wait a minute, and I'm like 19 years old thinking about this. And I talked to the guy. I'm like, well, why do you get paid more than me? What's the deal? And he said, well, I went to college. I'm a chemist. I'm a certified field chemist and everything else. I go, well, what does that mean? Because I never took no chemistry and nothing like that. And then he broke it down to me. And I was like, wow. I said, so if I was a chemist, I would get paid as much as you? And he said, yeah. I said, really? So what I did was for 2 years. Now, you guys got to remember this. We didn't have Google. Okay, this is the 80s. All right, there's no Googles, there's encyclopedias. Okay, there's big trade books. There's these huge books, and I can't even read half of them. But that's what I had to figure out to become a chemist. So I worked 2 years. I studied. I had a lot of help. A lot of people really helped me. They really thought that it was a great thing, for me to try to do this. And when it was all said and done, 2 years. I actually took the test to be a field chemist and passed and became a field chemist, and I tripled my salary. Now, the issue, what it was and what got me there was, again, learning in my way, the way I needed to learn. I wrote it down. I thought about it. I looked at it. I sounded things out. And then I started figuring out okay, what's the, breaking it down. Just like when I do a PowerPoint, I do a presentation right now. I break the whole presentation down. I write it all out. So I wrote out what inorganic versus organic chemistry, what it means, and the different elements. I had to figure out the different reactions, and I had to write all that down. Now, most kids would have picked up what I picked up in 2 years, they would have gotten in 3 months. But it just took me a while to do it. And I had these massive notes everywhere. It was something where I just had to it's like, and I know you guys will know what I'm saying. When you guys get it, when the light bulb comes on, it's solidly in your brain. There is no way you're going to lose it. You can talk about it like it was yesterday. It's in there, but it takes a minute for some people, and including myself, for it to be in there. So I became one of the best field chemists that they ever had in their life, because I was so inspired by the fact that not only I'm getting paid 3 times the money that I was making before, I learned something that I did not know, had no clue about. So it just inspired me to you know what? Now what's next at that point? I'm 22 years old. You know, I go get another job, a really good job, working for the Department of Energy here at Stanford, Stanford University, making, even more money than I was making. But the point for me, and Rosie calls me Mr. DPX, for me, it was about, I had to sit down and put a plan together. It's writing it out. I had to write it out. I cannot, I think you had mentioned, Tanisha, that you forget your people. Your people remind you of things that you might forget or whatever. I have the same staff, the same people remind me. Even when I was in, like, I'm single, but when I was in a relationship, I would tell whoever I was with, don't get offended if I don't remember X, Y, and Z. I remember numbers. You said you're a good numbers person. I'm a great numbers person, but don't get offended if I forget. Like, if you tell me, because this is the one thing I hate. I hate when people say, I told you, and I mean, look, I know you told me, but understand, I don't think the way that you think. I don't process the things the way you process. You can't get offended if I ask you 5 times, just know in heart, I'm not doing it to piss you off. I'm not doing it because I don't care, because trust me, I care. I'm doing it because I just don't remember. My brain does not process like that. Once it sinks in, birthdays, names, my children's birthdays, obviously they're names, things that are important, it sinks in. I got you. But that, hey, on Tuesday, I need you to pick up my dry cleaning, or hey, on Wednesday, you need to take the trash off or something like that. It's like, you told, okay, no, remind me, make sure you remind me to do that. You know what I mean? So again, for me, it's about the process of learning and how I taught myself, how I equate, the process of understanding things, my own way, the way I do it, not the way you guys do it, not the way and I remember Tanisha had made a comment about how, or maybe it was Rosie had said about, like, in your mind, you have this beautiful story, like you're the most creative, like you're sitting here like, man, I'm going to win an award because of this idea that I have. And then you put it on the piece of paper and you're like, what the hell is this? This is some, like, no one understands this garbage. It's like, but in your mind, it's like you just tell them the story. And it's like, oh my God, I could make a movie about like going to the grocery store. It's so beautiful, but on paper, clueless, absolutely clueless. So I'm going to save Rosie. I'm going to save the DPX because I can talk for at least 6 hours on DPX. But I definitely want to save that. So I don't know if you're getting there, but let's save that, for later on, because I'm going to take up probably about 15 minutes just talking about DPX.
Oh, wow. Wow. Like, the stories are so alike, and I can see when everyone says something and Tanisha will be like, yeah, then Surama will say, yeah, I'm also like, yeah. It's almost like the same. But what I want to say to our listeners and viewers is that though we are 4 dyslexics right now on this screen, if you should put us in one room and give us something to work on, the probability that we're going to do it in different ways is so high. And so, in as much as we are dyslexics, we are different in many ways. However, we will have a lot of commonalities between us, the things we struggle with, the things, how creative our mindsets work. I remember, like, Tanisha and I wrote some sentence about 3 days ago, and it was so bad sentence. However, when I sent it to her, she read it and she understood it. And I said, come on, look at the bad sentence I've written. She said, I understood. My brain got it. But to somebody else, the person will be like, what are you talking about? Like, what have you written? But she didn't ask me that because her brain got exactly what I was trying to say. Aaron, why do you want to say something?
No, only just because, here's the thing. I understand, like, people whose second language, like I talk to people all the time, and their second language, it might, English is the second language. So they might be Indian or Chinese or whatever it is. And I can understand them well because when they write me or when they speak to me, I don't hear every word that they say. I don't hear, and I don't follow, like, everything they say, I don't follow it. I'm trying to sum up like what the point they're trying to make. So I would say 90% of the time, it's someone speaking to me. Other people have no clue what they're saying. I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that. Okay, boom, that's it. So that's why when you said that, Rosie, that being dyslexic really helps us, understand other people who don't speak the perfect English.
Can I just chip in on that? I'm sorry. Can I just chip in? I think it's even beyond what you've just said, Aaron, is exactly it. We are not listening to 100% of anybody's words. We are never reading 100% of the words. We kind of see it all as a big picture. Even when we're hearing it, we hear it as a big picture. And it's not that we don't care for the detail, because we do, like you said, and we care desperately, but we process on a very high level. And I think, by the way, I have this theory that the reason a lot of dyslexic people struggle is because they're trying to do things that normal people do. And I think Aaron said it earlier, so we're not supposed to do those things. Stay with me. I would never hire someone with ADHD or someone with dyslexia to work beneath me. I usually hire them to work in my executive team, because they see things on such a macro level. They see the whole picture. Whereas normal people, which they're lucky to be, kind of normal or not neurodiverse, they see the details. But the thing with leadership is when you get stuck in the details, you're no longer leading. When you're working in your business, you're not working on your business. So I just wanted to point out that whole so I was like, that whole thing that seems like a flaw and a weakness is why we are supposed to be in charge. And that's my thought process when it comes to neurodiverse people. We usually function best when we're able to be in charge, because we are actually some of the best and most willing delegators.
Absolutely.
Definitely delegate, right?
Absolutely.
When you think about teams and leaders who kind of hog everything, they create red tape, they create boundaries, that's not usually the neurodiverse person.
No.
So I think that those things you just said are also, they're kind of bad. But I think in the world of leadership, I think it's what makes us really good. When we're given, like you said earlier, Rosaline, the opportunity to actually navigate and thrive our landscape. And like you said, Aaron, when we're given the chance to learn what we want to learn.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well said. Well said.
Wow. Well said. I'm going to go to Surama to hear from her. And then after her, then we're going to go with general questions where we're going to talk about strengths, a bit of some kind of weakness. It's not weakness, challenges.
Yeah.
Children, because parents are watching us, teachers are watching us, and we want them to know. So, Surama, I'm coming to you. What really head you into this role? I've come to your studio at the school, and I'm amazed about the things you do. Like you create a whole world around you. How did you find that pathway? What took you to this journey? Can you share a bit of how you learn, how you do your things, and how you ended up in this career? Because to all we know, dyslexic people are blockheaded. We can never be anything. So how did you get here?
Well, we need more of these sessions to be able to tell the whole story. But just in a nutshell, first of all, I think I'm very good at working with people, and I have been very privileged to find myself in a school, Tema International School, where they believe in me. The founders of the school believe in me. Even before I worked here, they used to go to my former house studio, and she said, I want you to work in my school. And I used to tell her, I can't speak English. Then I couldn't speak English. I said, how can I work in an international school when I don't speak English? She said, I don't want the English. I want the things you are doing here. And I didn't accept to join Tema International School at that time, the very beginning. So I went to work in another school, and she realized in that school before TIS, I was the art teacher from grade 1 to 6. And I turned this space into something else with a group of colleagues. And we were doing something wonderful there with the children. But and she's like, no, you have to work in TIS. And I said, I still don't speak and write good English. But that's a long story. Coming to Ghana 22 years ago with my husband and our 3 children, my husband came ahead of us. He's Ghanaian. He went to Brazil to study for university. After finishing high school, he went to Brazil, and we met some years later. He was also struggling in university. What everyone took 4 or 5 years to complete, my husband took double of that almost to complete agriculture engineering. You can imagine a student from Ghana. He was forced to do agriculture engineer when all he did in school was liberal arts. So he struggled a lot. And I met him, we started dating, and he used to tell me stories about his country. I'm from Ghana and how things were here. Are you ready to marry me and go to Africa, to Ghana? And I was like, why not? I was 19 years old, so much in love. And I was like, yeah. And he said, it's a different space, and he used to talk about the culture. He used to talk about things, but I was just so willing, to do that. I think dyslexic people, we are also risk takers. We are also, apart from being resilient, empathetic, creative, visual thinkers, we are also risk takers. And I'm that type. So anyway, fast forward, was time to move to Ghana. The children were small and things were very tough here. He warned me. He says it's not an easy place. Back in 2001, when government have changed to another part and all that, I said, let's do this. I came in and I could barely have a 2 minutes conversation with you. 2 minutes is too long. In English, I could say hi, good morning, good evening. And if you ask me things like, how are you doing? It was big English to reply you, oh, we are doing well. And how are the children and your husband? You mess up everything for me. So I moved in with the children, and I had to put the children in a Ghanaian school. And we couldn't afford at the time to have the children in the international schools, the ones that accommodate expatriates. So we moved to Tema, and it was very tough. I can get very emotional when I talk about, so I hope today I can be more, easy, because it was tough. To see the teachers punishing, beating my children, especially the older one, he went through a lot. And he was a very outgoing child back in Brazil. When we moved, he was 6 years old. So here he became extremely timid, quiet. And our daughter, she didn't like to go to school. She'll go to school, but she asked me why I had to send her to school so small, because school was not a nice place to be. And that pushed me to learn English faster. And I used to sit down and cry as a mother of dyslexic children and of a dyslexic person in a different country with a different culture where things are done differently. And I need to fast learn all that. There's something in Ghana very interesting. When you go somewhere and you sit with a group of people, there's a way they greet. I think it's clockwise or whatever. Till today, 22 years, I get very confused. So, and you need to follow some steps, It's a cultural thing. And and another thing too, you can't really use your left hand. And using my left hand for me have been my father, because he could see I was different. He made sure I used my left hand, and I had a condition when I was 7. I have a crisis of epilepsy, long story. So I was asked to be using my left hand and doing all the things the doctor said I could no longer do it, including having children. So then being in Ghana, that was the situation. So I was like, no. And I used to go to the school and I want to tell the teachers that don't beat my children. I don't beat my children. And I couldn't say it, so I'll cry. My beginning in Ghana was, I was either smiling and laughing or was crying because I could not communicate. And a second language was very tough at 20 years old, dyslexic mother of dyslexic children in Ghana, Africa, where you are praised when you're the top of the class. You are praised for looking in a particular way, for having certain things, for speaking in a particular way. They appreciate the slangs and the good English. And I was just lost at a point. But resilience got me there. I say, one, I'm going to learn the language. So you find me going to the market in Community 1 and sitting with this charcoal seller, okra seller, fish seller. I had to go and speak to people who had very basic English, because all the books my husband gave me to learn, it was messing up with my brain. So at the time, my husband had this set of books with DVDs. So I'll put the DVD and I listen. And my husband told me, watch TV, read the newspapers and the books in English, just read through. No matter how you read the book and you listen to the radio, the TV and everything, and you finally connect. And that was for me. So I'll go to the market, I'll speak to the lady who worked in my house, who she could barely write her name, but her English was enough for me to build a foundation. So that was my journey. So I was like, I'm going to learn the language. I'm going to go back to school as an educator, because that's my background. However, I needed to support my husband financially. So I needed to work to make money. And luckily, being a dyslexic back in Brazil, and Brazilian, the system, actually the education is not perfect, but there's an aspect of experiential learning that really got me, was good for me. So there are after school, there are communities there, and I wish I dreamed that for Ghana. I have a big dream in my head too. Over there, you live in a community. So because of the whole situation of drugs and Black people, colored people, and people from low incomes, so the communities have systems where after school, you don't pay anything and you go and learn how to bake, how to cook, how to be a mechanic, electrician, needlework, craft work, everything and anything. I was always in those classes, trust me, because I knew I was good at different things. So I was joining every extracurricular. I was in you tell me there's something new they're teaching somewhere, I'm there. So moving to Ghana, yes, I couldn't speak English, but I was very skillful. I could mold, I could do sculpture with dough, I could bake wedding cakes, I could turn a whole venue 22 years ago in Ghana where you didn't have much. I could do your wedding for you and I didn't speak English, right? I had this big book around where I'm trying to find the words to speak to my clients. And I was making money, I was working, I started making condos, and I worked for 7 years doing all the things I knew how to do it. And while I was doing things, making money, working with people from all levels of society, I was learning English. And then I say, okay, I'm now going to work in the schools where my children are. So teachers don't beat my children. They don't insult my children. They don't dump my children's spirit. I need to be inside there. So I started working at Angel Specialist School as an art teacher. And I was in every meeting trying to take notes. At the time, you didn't have the audio now and the computer, how it is, but I was doing my best. And I build connections and relationships very easy with people. That come very easy with me. I think because of dyslexia, it's like, I know I can do it on my own. So I always have this ability to build strong teams. And at Angel Specialist School, that happened. So I was working with people, and my ability to validate their strengths and to balance weaknesses or areas for growth and strengths of the team. And there I was for 3 years, was an incredible experience. And then from Angel Specialist School, as a head of the art department and an art teacher from grade 1 to 6, I moved into TIS back in 2010. And I was very reluctant to accept to work in Tema International School because it's international school, is in a bigger spectrum and all that. And it's an IB school. I could not even pronounce 13 years ago, I joined this school. To say international baccalaureate was a punishment. I used to be so embarrassed to be in front of my colleagues and parents and have to talk about CAS. So I used to find ways to create videos of my students to empower them to do the presentation, because I could be very embarrassed. And I was told one time, a colleague of mine introduced me at the time that we have a new class coordinator. She doesn't speak good English, she's Brazilian. You know, I was already used to that, because people, they loved to emphasize your weaknesses instead of your strengths. And I say this with a lot of humility and respect for culture. The African culture, the Ghanaian culture, we tend to pay more focus to what people can't do well and their weaknesses. Children, adults, everyone is ingrained in the culture. We need to change the narrative. Than to praise. We have a problem with praising. We have a problem of being too happy. We have a problem. I don't know if this is back into slavery and how we were brainwashed to think we are good for nothing. I think this is back to many hundreds years ago, and I see it here so strong, where it's very easy to say, hey, you look fat, you don't look well, or you have that thing. The thing they said to me is dyslexia. But it's very hard to compliment and celebrate. So one thing I also struggle in schools is to see how often parents and teachers dump the children. I have seen parents beating children in front of me, not in the school I am in now, but in my former school. They'll beat the child right in front of me when they get the results. And I weep with the child and in front of the parent, and I'm telling them, no, your child is excellent at this and this and this and this. I still hear parents saying, I don't know what to do with that child. You know, I have Mary and John, they are brilliant. They give me so much joy. But I have Kofi, who I just don't know what to do with that child. And I get very emotional when I talk about it, because it comes with such a force. So my desire, you know, and beyond the walls of TIS, because TIS is a very safe space. There's an understanding of the value of experiential learning. And we run the IB curriculum. That curriculum was also a very big word some years ago. I could not say curriculum. Oh, and I say it so nicely now. It's embedded in the curriculum. It's the core of what we do in TIS, experiential learning. So please, it's not me, it's not Surama. I do nothing. I'm just, you know, a vessel, because this is what this school stands for. The school have 4 pillars that I am so passionate about: sports, culture, service, and academics. And then we transition, that makes the leadership incubator. Come to a school where all these areas are valued, not just, how do you put it? That list I told you I don't like, the merit list of the academicians. Here, there's a merit list for everyone, for sports, for service, for culture, for academic, for leadership. And there is nothing like probation list. There is nothing like weak students. There are students with areas for growth. And every single student have potential and have, you know, their talents, they have their strengths. So this is where we focus here. But I sit in this beautiful place. You see how my environment is. And I feel extremely privileged, but I also feel guilty. Okay, let's not say guilty, but I feel responsible for going out there. And that's what I've been talking to Rosaline. We need to step out in various other schools, probably 98% of the schools in Ghana, and create awareness and talk to teachers. And we cannot talk to only teachers who are punishing students, insulting students. We also have to talk to parents who are punishing, insulting, neglecting. Neglection is a topic for a whole discussion. And that is evident. It's happening everywhere in the other schools. So we need to step, African dyslexia, we need to go out there. We have a responsibility as dyslexics to step into the 90-80% of schools in this country and speak to those parents and give hope back to those children. Tell them that, listen, I am just like you. I made it. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
It gets emotional because, I'm sorry. I get emotional. I'm sorry.
It's okay. That's okay. That's powerful. What you just said is powerful.
Exactly. And emotional. I mean, just on the educator side, just to tap in there, I homeschooled my son. So I had my son at 16, and I homeschooled him till he was 18 because it was just much easier
Yeah.
than the first just reception alone, just getting him to reception, which is like we have nursery, then reception, then primary school in England. Nursery was fine because I had him in my friend's sister's nursery. I only had 6 kids. It was like Montessori nursery, so it was perfect. She never complained if I was late. She understood the situation. It didn't matter. But when it came to reception, it's in a school, and it's like there's a scoring system, like you talk about, Surama. Like depending on how on time I am, somehow my son looks better, but I'm bad with timing, right? So didn't really translate. And I could tell that he was suffering for being late as a child, like as a 3-year-old, as a 4-year-old. Why would you do that? I think in England. So one day, there was like just too many ridiculous conversations with teachers and his teachers. And so I just took him home and never took him back, and I just homeschooled him his whole life.
Yes.
It was easier. It was easier. It was better. And actually, there is also, despite what we're talking about with dyslexia, even for students who don't have neurodiversity, the school system is terrible because, the reason that the children are being beaten for being neurodiverse and not understanding, and the reason the parents are behaving in this way is endemic. So it's got nothing to do specifically with dyslexia. It's actually the way people treat and focus and, work with education. That's where we need to put our attention. Yes, for ourselves, but also in general. But, the problem is a lot of parents take it out. So, the mom's saying something like, I don't know what to do with Kojo. That person really doesn't know what to do with Kojo. And instead of them to acknowledge that there is an opportunity for learning in themselves as a human being, they'll actually then lash out because they outsource childcare from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. That is exactly what they're outsourcing. And the very fact that they outsource childcare to the teacher, and then the child comes back with wahala. They're like, listen, I've been at work all day. So there's also social cultural issues in terms of actually the way that society expects parents to function when they have children. We're supposed to willingly abandon our children, give them to someone else for a bunch of hours a day. That person and those people get to know our kids better than ever. But when there's any little problem, it comes back to us, even though some of us may not have finished school. I mean, okay, I did, but some parents, not all parents are. You don't get a baby because you got all your GCSEs or all your degree programs. You've got a baby because your ovaries worked out, the sperm hit an egg, one bam bam, 9 months later, human comes out. But teachers think that because we've got children and we give the children to them, that this somehow means we know what we're doing. And I don't understand that because a lot of teachers have children. And then parents get sucked into that vision and then put it on themselves. That, oh my God, why isn't Kojo doing as well as Susan and John? But meanwhile, wasn't Susan and John aren't doing well because of you. They're doing well because of that teacher. So it's like there's a whole ecosystem of support that I think you're right about, Surama. And it's about what are the teachers doing? What's the education system doing? What are the parents able to do? What are the kids interested in doing? What does society allow us to do? What does the environment allow them to do? It's a huge problem, and emotional and physical abuse is not the solution. So I'm sorry you've had to go through that.
Wow. Thank you all so much. The conversation is leading into a very emotional setting, and I feel you, Surama. You got me. Like I had to go backstage because I started tearing up, and I can feel every word that you say. And you did mention certain things that I feel like me as a Ghanaian or even somebody who travel extensively on the continent, I see it everywhere. I think generally we Black people, we criticize than we praise. And so therefore, when the academic results come, it's all about, do you make first position? Why are you the last of the class? Why are you so useless? What is happening to you? And the neglection, sometimes parents give up so easily. Sometimes parents give up so easily. And I know the school system isn't perfect, but imagine you parents giving up on your child, then what have you left the teacher who is teaching to do? because
Yes.
you gave birth. So if you give up, then the teacher teaching the child, what do they do? And that's what we want to change here. I want to remind everybody you are watching Dyslexia Global Conversation, and today is World Dyslexia Day, and we are hanging out with Aaron Dante, who is dyslexic, and executive for global sustainability, Tanisha, who is enterprise strategist, Surama King, who is an experiential learning expert. We are hanging out with all these dyslexics, and of course, myself, Rosaline, I'll be your trainer. The four of us are all dyslexics, and today we're just sharing our story of how we went through life, through hard work, resilience, and never giving up spirit to be where we are. Because all the stories everyone is sharing from here does not show that we just woke up and got into the positions that we are. It shows that we worked hard, people stepped on our toes, people told us we cannot do it, but we made it through. And I know Abrina and mother, Dr. Abla, you are watching us. Abrina is a 12-year-old dyslexic girl, and she's watching us, and apparently she's smiling with everything you guys are sharing. It's resonating with her, and she's smiling so much. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Nukma Mausi, Oladonwi, Blessing, Khadija. We have someone watching us from Guyana, all the way from Guyana. So our conversation has gone very fine. We have lovely comments there. Please send us your questions, and very soon we'll be taking all the questions. We are not ignoring it, but keep sending questions to my guests over here, who are all part of the Africa Dyslexia Organization. Send us questions, and we'll be able to answer them for you. But I'm going back to them so that we find out more about who they really are and how we can use their message to inspire our dyslexic learners. I mean, we have been sharing as adults with dyslexia and how we have managed to get into our various positions and in life. Now let's come back to the very, very young children. If, let's say, after this conversation, a parent decides to replay this conversation to their kids, what would you, Tanisha, what would you tell that young child, maybe at the age of 8, who is struggling somewhere? What would you tell them about dyslexia and how they can navigate through their life? Do you have anything to share?
Yeah, I mean, what I would tell them is that grown-ups, we pretend a lot, right? I mean, I am glad I don't pretend as much as I now know grown-ups pretend must have been pretending when I was a child, right? So grown-ups, we pretend a lot. We make things seem very different to how they are. So the best thing that you can do is you can watch us, you can look at us, and you can try and understand us and try and understand why we are the way we are. But you should not try to be who we are, because most of the time we don't know who we are, right? And when it comes to being dyslexic, I think that even understanding yourself when you have dyslexia, dyscalculia, any learning difference is actually very hard, because what you have to do is you have to question, it's like Aaron said, why don't I understand this? Do I not understand this because this is not understandable? And like, there are times where something is not understandable. So you have to try and navigate the difference between when you can't understand something because the person communicating or the information just does not make sense, and when you don't understand because your way your brain is wired, this method isn't for you. And that could be in school, that could be with mom, that could be with friends. You always have to try and navigate it. Don't always think that you don't understand because it's you. Be ready to make the other person prove to you what they're explaining it properly, because with communication, the responsibility is always on the sender, not the receiver, right? So, if you're a young person and you're neurodiverse and you know that you struggle to understand things, don't always think you struggle to understand things because it's you. Sometimes it could just be a grown-up that doesn't understand it themselves, and so they don't know how to tell you in multiple ways what you are supposed to be doing. And especially, you know, this is so bad because it happens a lot in academia. PhD people are the worst teachers because PhDs understand at such a high level, such a pinpoint, that they get very frustrated in large class. You know this. Aaron's like, yep, I know exactly.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
So, you know, especially in my role as Associate Dean of Learning and Teaching, I hate hiring PhDs. And it's so unfortunate because they do all of that to get hired. But I'm like, no, because you went too far. How will you as a PhD teach a first year mature student who has confidence issues because they've been in the industry and they've taken themselves, they've carried their bag and they decided, I'm going to try and go to school like Surama did. You don't know what they're thinking. You don't understand because you're too far gone. So, you know, especially for kids, it's very, very important to understand as adults, we don't always know everything, and we don't always know we don't know, and we don't always know we're not saying it properly. So listen, be respectful, do all of that, but you have to double check information. And luckily for you, you do have Google, you have AI, you have all these things to check. Because you know what? I'll tell you a quick little story. When I was in secondary school, I was in top set in maths. And my teacher got so annoyed with me because he would teach a certain way and I would make a new formula. So my grandma used to get me to teach. So I fell in love with something called Vedic mathematics. I'll type it in here. Vedic mathematics is probably the way we're all supposed to be learning it. It's an Asian, I think it's Indian. But I don't know. My grandma had me, let me spell mathematics properly. Reading and understanding Vedic mathematics. And so when my teacher would teach a certain way, I'll do the sum with Vedic maths. So he would look at my correct answers and be confused about why, one, I finished all the work, and two, my work doesn't look the way he told me to do it. And this one particular teacher used to hate me coming into class. So he would just leave my classwork on the table with a chair at the door. So I wasn't even invited in. And he would come outside and take the Mr. Lackey. I remember this man, Mr. Lackey. Oh my God. He'd come outside and he'd just check I'm there, mark me in the register and go back in and then just leave me because he was like, you don't even listen to me. So just do the work. Don't be in the classroom. Don't confuse everyone else with your weird way of doing stuff. So, and you know, sometimes as well, I would correct his formulas because sometimes he'd be wrong. So what I'd say is that, trust that you have something trust that you are different. Okay, that is a good thing. That's not a bad thing. Accept it and get past it. And acknowledge that, yes, sometimes you just don't understand things. But don't assume for a second that you don't always understand because of you. Just remember that sometimes the other person is not making sense.
That's true. That's true.
Absolutely. We have a comment from Dr. Seti. Dr. Seti is ADO's Director for Training and Skills Development, and she's saying, I would differ. Priscilla, I think she got your name wrong. I would differ. I have a PhD and I have been working with children with dyslexia and learning differences for 30 years. And
let me touch on that. And I can totally believe that because you care enough to actually even start down that journey. What I'm talking about is a lot of academics go through the route of becoming a PhD in order to become an academic. They don't do the human aspect. So they therefore don't learn about learning how to learn about learning how to teach. They don't learn about neurodiversity, and they're not naturally inclined to want to care about that. So the point I was making is just because someone has a PhD doesn't mean that they're great at explaining. Being really good at explaining and a PhD combined is a beautiful formula, right? A beautiful formula. But a lot of people just go to school, and it's in all industries. Some people just go to school to read the books and sit at the desk and do the job. Yeah. And anything peripheral, like there is a learner that needs 5 minutes more, they didn't teach that in their PhD. So therefore it doesn't count. And just so you're aware as well, Dr. Seti, I'm talking for England. In England, you can have a PhD and that qualifies you as a lecturer. You don't actually have to go through teacher training to get in the classroom. As a PhD, you can be in the classroom. And then what happens is you do your teacher training as you're going, which means a lot of people suffer that journey because their teacher has only ever studied, you know, I don't know, what did you study? You said you studied chemical sciences, right? So, you know, if the teacher's only ever studied chemical sciences, never teaching and never anything about neurodiversity, that teacher will struggle in the classroom. And that's the point that I was trying to make. In a classroom with neurodiverse people.
Yeah.
Can I say this? You know, what you're saying, I totally get. That's why I was like, yeah. Here's the thing that I've always believed this is that there's certain people who are exceptional. I mean, they're exceptional, like learners, everything, and they just get it. They don't have to work. They don't have to work for it. They just get it. I have a daughter that's like that. She doesn't have to work at all because she just gets it. And they're not always, though, the best teachers. And the reason I say that, if you think about it, look at it in a sport analogy. Michael Jordan is just a gifted player. I mean, that guy is the best of all time. Now, is he a good teacher? Could he teach basketball to someone that's like me, that doesn't have the skills? He would probably get very frustrated because it's like, why don't you shoot this way? Why don't you put your hand this way? Why don't you do this? Because he's so smart. I mean, he's just gifted, and not always. And again, this session isn't about bashing, individuals whatsoever. I'm just on my level. The thing is, people who've taught me, that I've learned from them, take the time. They understand that, I'll have no problems. I'll tell people, even before I knew I was dyslexic, I will tell people, like, look, I'm slow, or, you gotta dumb it down a little bit. Okay. You got those big words you're using. I don't understand what they are. I gotta go look those words. I have no problems. Even my professional career, people know that I'm just like what you see is what you get with me. There isn't, I'm not trying to act like I'm something I'm not. I am like, if I don't understand, I don't understand. And that's the point. I think that when it comes to going back to relating it to parents, like, if your child says they don't get it, they don't understand, believe them. Don't think they're just trying to pull the wool over your eyes, because I'm gonna tell you right now, and you all know what I'm talking about. We didn't go to school saying that we want to be class clowns, or we want to be buffoons, acting like we don't care. We wanted to be as smart as everybody else. We wanted to be thought of just like everybody else. We didn't want to be that kid that stands out. We didn't want that. So as a parent, you have to listen to your children. You have to take your children seriously and make sure that your children, you give them the benefit of the doubt if they're struggling, because no kid wants to, struggle. No kid wants to. No kid wants to have that label, that they're different. So trust your children, trust what they say, investigate, but don't jump to conclusions. Like here in the United States, I've never been beaten in school. I mean, that was one thing. They used to have corporal punishment at one time, I think in the 60s, maybe the 50s, 60s. But I've never had to worry about getting beat. Never. I mean, they were very sensitive where I lived on the West Coast, very sensitive, teaching wise to the kids that had problems. I was lucky there, but I've heard stories about children being, beat, gotten hit, and, trying to beat them into, paying attention or something like that. I couldn't imagine if when I was a kid, if someone was beating me to pay attention, I don't know what I would have done, because I couldn't have done no more. I mean, I did everything I possibly could do to pay attention, to do my work, to be heard. I was very polite. I wasn't a really loud, angry child, broke stuff or whatever. I was very, very polite. I was a good kid. So I could not imagine if they had put that pressure on me at a young age. And I know that's what a lot of African children go through. Because again, you guys went through, you guys live what it is to be in Africa. So I can only imagine. So my advice to parents is listen to your children. Definitely listen to the educators to a certain extent. I mean, if they're labeling your child, a certain way. There has to be a reason, because your child is no different than anyone else, except for he has a learning disability. That's it. But he's not a bad child. He's not lazy. He's not a child that's trying to be a disruptor because he just wants to. Maybe he's reaching out for attention. Who knows what it is? But you got to figure that out, because every child, I'm no different. We are no different than all those other people out there that are successful, reasonably successful. There's nothing. It's just that we're dyslexic. We went a different path to get to where we're at right now. And parents need to sit down and be honest with themselves, to know that, and take and look at their children and say, hey, look, there's a reason why our kids are struggling. It's not because they're acting out. And be honest and be compassionate and be loving. That's the thing. You gotta like love your child so much. It doesn't matter if you're busy, what you're going through, whatever, to say, you know what, I'm gonna give him or her an opportunity to learn, to understand, because they're gonna be okay. They're gonna be okay. And they need you. Those kids need you. They listen to the things that you say about them. And that's the stuff that we think about right now. I think about all the negative stuff my father told me 45, 50 years ago. I still have that trifling mentality in my back here. It's back here. It's not right here. But I remember him calling me trifling and some of the other negative stuff that he tried. Well, I don't know if he tried to put it in my head, but he put it in my head. So those are the things that we got to make sure that we're very we're very cautious, because again, you don't know the damage that you do your child, especially a child who's dyslexic, not a child that has no issue, but a dyslexic child. I mean, you guys don't understand how that, the parents don't understand how, some parents, I should say all of us, but some parents don't understand how much that is just sets your children back. You're not doing your kids a justice by trying to make them hard and toughen up and go out there and just do it. No, you got to be more compassionate, especially with us. We will show you if you show us. Okay, we will show you. We will show you greatness, but you gotta help us understand what that is and how we get there.
Oh my goodness, Aaron, Tanisha, Surama, you guys are just pouring some great nuggets, and I hope parents is benefiting you as well as educators is benefiting you. This is Dyslexia Global Conversation, and today we are marking the World Dyslexia Day with 4 dyslexics on one screen. Please send us your questions, as we'll be coming to the question sections very soon. Send us your questions. We have a few minutes to be wrapping up here, but I'm going to go back to Surama on this question. Surama, you are a mother with dyslexic children. Yourself, you are dyslexic. Your husband is dyslexic. A house full of dyslexics. You are also an educator. I would like you to address our educators and also offer some advice to parents who have just discovered that their children are dyslexic, and those who don't even know their children are dyslexic, but they feel like their children are not good at school.
Well, it's so many incredible nuggets that we heard from our colleagues. But I was just taking notes while you were saying, first of all, stop comparing. I think comparison does not help us at all. It does not help anyone. But imagine yourself in a classroom where a teacher is comparing you with your siblings. Some of these children, my children went through that a lot. My son is the oldest and the youngest, my daughter, they're dyslexic. So having them in the same school sometimes was very challenging. The teachers' day, the day the parents come to teachers' conference day, parents' conference day, it was a punishment for me, for my husband, and for my children. Because the teachers will sit there and they'll compare. So our middle son, David, according to the teachers, he's bright, he's brilliant, he's good. And my children heard that in the classroom all the time, making comparisons. And sometimes they didn't know of course, they didn't know any of us were dyslexic, but they'll compare. Look at your mother. She's this. She's so full of. She's this. She's that. And look at you, my son. The oldest had terrible things. Comparison. Don't compare siblings. Don't compare a dyslexic child with a non-dyslexic child, or even with another dyslexic child. So comparison in any other level, it doesn't help. Creates so much frustration. It creates so much. It's humiliating. And many times here, the comparison goes to such a higher level. They even get, in Ghana, it's a small village. And again, I want to say that every time I use Ghana is because I'm Brazilian. I lived there for a long time. I can analyze both. I can share from both spaces. And I said that out of a lot of respect. And I have been here for 22 years. This country has been a blessing to me. I don't want to offend anyone. But, here we are a small village. So in Brazil, for example, is my mom, my dad, my uncles, my first cousins. And here is an extension that goes far. And the child hears, but your grandfather was this, but was very intelligent. My son here, your grandfather spoke good English. He was a radio presenter. Your uncles speak good English. Look at you. So that damages, breaks down. Siblings get angry at each other. That sibling that's constantly reminded that he's good for nothing. He's going to hate the other sibling, brother or sister who is doing well in school. You are breaking homes because you are making people feel they are less off. Yeah. So teachers, parents, my tone is a bit passionate, but it's not out of anger. It's just about a place from love. I want to reach out to you who is listening to us right now and ask you, don't compare. It's not going to help. Now, another thing is vulnerability, being vulnerable. Parents don't want to be vulnerable, especially in our society here. Already, vulnerability does not come easy in the African culture. Why should I be vulnerable? Why people should hear my struggles? Why people should hear that you have this thing? Let's keep it to ourselves, a big secret. It's our family secret. So we don't talk about. In family gatherings, the parents have 3, 4, 5 children, and here the families are bigger and larger. They like to talk about the ones who are A-stars. You get to a gathering and you talk about Mary had A's straight. Oh, the WASE result was high, the IB results. The other one, you don't want to talk about, oh, this one. And we block ourselves from being vulnerable. And our children, I see here every day, they also don't want to be vulnerable. The students, the learners, some even know they're dyslexic. The denial, because vulnerability shows my weaknesses. I don't want that. So we don't talk about. And let me tell you, if we don't talk about, if we don't accept, we are not going to get help. So, and the third one that comes as a consequence of all this is punishment. Children I have seen in schools, we work a lot with the schools from the local schools, the government schools, children have been denied of lunch time. You're not eating if you don't finish this work. You're not having snack if you don't finish your work. Mom is not going to buy you a new something if you don't finish the work. Children have come to me crying desperately. I had this student long time ago in another school, and she come to school crying all the time because if she didn't get a certain mark in her results, and she will not get those marks. She had all the spectrum. She had dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, all the Ds. And she could not even get a D in school. And she was denied everything. And there was this situation where she was told Christmas will come, they're not giving her any gifts. But she was also told by her mom and her aunt that, she had bad underwears. She'll go to school with no underwear, because if they will shame her, she will sit up. And she was terrified by going to school. Mama Sue, I will not be given underwears. And she was just terrified, and that made it worse for her. So every time she has exams, she's sick before, and they diagnosed her with malaria. I think she had been intoxicated with malaria medicine. And I used to tell her parents, she does not have malaria. She's terrified. She's afraid. Fever. Sometimes you get fever as a result of your internalized emotions. And
Yes.
they are like 38. She does
Yeah.
not have malaria. She's scared. She has anxiety, high level of anxiety. Dyslexic children and adults, generally, they are very anxious people. They
Yes.
overthink, they are anxious. Now imagine I'm dyslexic and I'm told I'll be punished. I can't talk about my challenges, and I'm being compared with other people at the job space or during the family gatherings that somebody's better than me. We are destroying filters. One of you said that at the beginning. I think Rosaline said, we are damaging, we are trapping. And I also have a brother who is dyslexic. He dropped out from school in class 6 and never went back again. Now he's doing well. He lives in Portugal. He have a printing press. He works with a press. He's creative. He never went to college. He didn't finish high school. He's my brother. And he is terrified of schools. He's like, school for him is the worst place in the world. His son is dyslexic. He dropped out of school, is going through deep depression back in Brazil. I feel terrible. I'm far away. I try as much as I can to speak to him, to speak to the mother, but they don't understand. They don't get it. You see, I just want to share these little bits for us to see that if we parents don't step in, if you don't understand dyslexia, if you don't understand the subject, if you can't help a child, it's okay. Just validate. Just know that they need extra time. Somebody can read. I want to show you in my office. I have a bunch of books here. The books I'm reading. I can take what maybe a normal person takes. Our son David can take 1 week or 3 days, 2 days to read a book. He's interested. I can take a month. Now, thanks to all the books, I can listen to the book and I'll listen to the book again. The third time, I'm good. To submit the work, I have to read through and work over and over. We need time. It's not because we are lazy. We need more time. But sometimes we get trapped into the work. We can be very good procrastinators too, because we just think we can't do it. We were told that we're not good enough. We get late for things. Let me tell you why most of times a dyslexic child, parents and educators, listen to me right now. We don't get lazy because we are unable to respect time. And I'm not talking about people in general not respecting time. I actually now get very early to places because I know me. Because there's an anxiety. Let me tell you this. There is a moment of anxiety in a dyslexic person that you have no idea what it is. Just to share with you, just to illustrate this. I was invited to, I was a speaker at the IB conference in The Hague in the Netherlands in 2017. I have been then a CAS coordinator for over how many years? I have been in experiential learning for how many years? I love what I do with a passion. I prepared myself for months. I was in The Hague and I went through anxiety for 3 days, filling myself with caffeine because I was just afraid to not be alert enough. And I remember the night before my presentation, I was in this 4th floor of the hotel room. If I'm telling you, my desire was to vanish from earth. I can't explain to you in words what the anxiety is. I knew my craft. And the conference place was beautiful, organized. The people there, I was thinking everyone knew better than me. And all the conferences I watched before, I was comparing myself and trying to, but if I don't do this, but if I forget this, but if I was terrified. That night, I buried his lip until I called a colleague. He's Indian. And I'm so grateful to him. I called a couple of colleagues. And one of them, he told me to sit down and breathe. So he took me some breathing exercise and supported me. And my co-colleague who was there with me came to my hotel room. And she said, do you like to present to me? I was broken in my room. And I told her, no, I don't think I can. But she spoke to me. She left the hotel room. And I sat down. And let me share this now. And I prayed. My room where I was presenting had maybe 5 people watching me. And I prayed, and I honestly did. So people be so busy and choosing the other sessions, but not mine. Even though I knew how prepared I was. The next day, I woke up very early. I was there. I set up the room with all the reflections from my students. I was talking about case studies on experiential learning and what, is the outcome of what our students do. And the room was filling up. Rosaline, I just panicked for a second until my resilient spirit said, no, you can do it. My room was filled with people. And I started my session by telling them, I want to talk to you about a country called Ghana where I lived for years, blah, blah, blah. But I don't want to just tell you what it is. I want you to experience what it is. So I played one of the Ghanaian musics at the time, just to have them have a feel. And we danced at the beginning. And I finished the session of 90 minutes. And there were a bunch of people around me wanting to ask questions. And I had to, the next person to have a session in my space was also part of the group, and I was like, I need to go, there's another session soon. She told me, stay, we need to listen, we need to ask you questions, we need to talk to you, just stay. And I started speaking out. I went to Kenya, I went to Mauritius, and every single time I went through that anxiety, that moment of I want to disappear.
Yeah.
And I am almost 50 years old. I am better at it, yes. Even sessions like this, sometimes I say, no, Rosaline or somebody, I cannot make it, I'm not busy. Not because I'm sometimes genuinely busy. I'm running away, I'm afraid, I'm anxious, I'm scared. And if I don't deliver well, if I don't speak well, if my English is not good enough. So, and I am an adult. Parents and teachers, when your children have to do dictation, presentation, and they get sick, they can't come to class, they are late, they're disorganized, we are just afraid. We are genuinely afraid to fail you because we know what you will tell us after. So please be kind to us. Be kind to us because we will show you the best of us if you hold our hands.
Whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We will show you the best of us if you hold our hands. And that's it. Yes, yes, yes. I love it. That's it. And listen, the anxiety part, it is not you only.
Yeah.
I also experience it all the time
Yeah.
because I've heard so much, you are not good. You cannot do it. You can't make it. You're good for nothing for so long that it has become part of me. I only started correcting my confidence and this anxiety 7 years ago. That was when I got diagnosed and knew about dyslexia. Even though I had gone on, have my master's degree, I'm very good in my industry of hospitality. The moment you call me for a project, I'm like, oh my God, I can't do it. I can't do it. Yet I can do it. And I struggle with this all the time. And that's a lot of people, that's what they go through. The anxiety that has been caused from the home, from the school. As a child growing up, it just become part of you for so long that you need to do a lot of things. So parents, if you hear and your child is young, like Abrina, for instance, Dorcas, if you're still watching, that is something you have to start working on now. We are so fortunate to know when Abrina was like 10. So this is the time that you can work on that anxiety, that low self-confidence. Abrina, I'm talking about, likes robotics. She does clothing. She's 12 years old. She draw. She plays the piano. Tell me how many people, and these are skills that nobody have taught her. These are skills that she came out with. So I'm just using her as an example of one of the children we know that has all these skills. But if, assuming she had not been discovered as dyslexic, the parents will beat her, the school will beat her, and what happens is the natural abilities that God gifted her will start diminishing, and she will rather put on the anxiety coat, the low self-confidence quote, the I can't do it quote, and that would be her. And so I side with you. And it's not you alone, especially for we adults, just knowing we struggle with this all the time. And I know Aaron and Tanisha will have something to do. But before you go onto that, I want to give the Aaron and Tanisha your question so that you address both, and then we are run out of time almost, then we pick our questions and we are out of here. There is a question here that I want you all to address. And the question has to do with organizations. Black Gold is asking, how do we get recruiters and companies to be involved in paying attention to people who are different? In this case, we are talking about dyslexia, the entire neurodiverse community. Both of you have businesses, and both of you have also worked for external employers. So, Tanisha or DPS, Aaron, I don't know which of you will go first, but any of you can go first.
Aaron, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll make it brief because I know we don't have much time. So the key is being honest and being open. Have no problem being, showing humility about, about us, about our condition. I have no problems. And now that I know, because see, before I didn't know, I know now. So now it's like, look, I'm dyslexic. I did a presentation to Apple, and corporate. I made it very clear to them that I'm dyslexic, that I represent African dyslexia. I'm looking to help people like me. So it starts with just being open and honest about like what we're no different. We're no different than anybody else. It's just that this is what is you're passing on some major talent by not identifying or not being open to a person that says, hey, I learn, I do things a different way. I learn a different way. And it's just, again, showing, the example that we're sitting right here and we're talking about this, we got to make this normal. Like in a year from now, 2 years from now, this should just be a normal conversation. It shouldn't be this big to do about being dyslexic. It's like now we have a platform to say, hey, there's children out here. Here's what this is how you identify them. And then you fix them and then you move on. No taboo, nothing. It's being honest. So in the business world, all we want is results. We want, a customer pays me, I'm a consultant, they pay me to solve a problem. They don't care if I'm autistic, if I can figure out their problem. But it's just having that conversation in the beginning and just let the employers get them thinking about dyslexic people and giving them a chance. And most people are open-minded. They don't really care, to be honest with you. They really don't. They don't care. So I just think that it's just having the conversation. Just put it out there.
Absolutely, being very open about it. And I can share my experience briefly with that. When I joined Disney, I just made them aware that, listen, I'm dyslexic. I'm not the person to call me to write the reports. In the meetings, don't call me to take the minutes. But if you want me, let me use my critical thinking ability
Absolutely
to produce solutions. And
yes.
Because a Fortune 500 company, they knew better. They said yes. And so I never wrote one report. Ever. I never did that. And they got the best out of me. But imagine if they had asked me to do research, produce reports, they would have limited my ability and whatever I would have been able to contribute to the organization. And
Absolutely.
So, Tanisha, what do you say?
Well, I mean, is this about how recruiters can do better? This particular question you want me to answer, or the government one? Because I saw two questions.
How do we get recruiters and companies to be involved in paying attention to people who are different? So Aaron touched briefly on it, then we'll go to the government one.
So I'm just going to share, I'm going to go into something quickly. When it comes to recruiters, I do think that if someone is neurodiverse in nature, I think that the most respectful thing to do is be neurodiverse in our approach to what we think their career path should be. So I very rarely recommend for neurodiverse people to actually become employees beyond the fact that they need to have money, they need to do this, they need to do that. I think neurodiverse people have to learn to carve their own pathway. Now, the numbers are always their numbers are always different. I think, Rosaline, you say something like 1 in 4 are dyslexic, because that's the statistic that you use for Ghana, right?
1-5.
1 in 5. And I think on the global level, there's something like 780 million people are dyslexic, and that one comes as 1 in 10. But then if 1 in 10 are dyslexic, that would say to you that the most, if we compared successful entrepreneurs in the world, the statistics should not be more than 10%. Because if one in 10 are dyslexic, then 1 in 10 successful entrepreneurs would be dyslexic. But actually, it's 35% in the UK, in the USA, 20% in the UK, and amongst the general population around the world is 15%. So the dyslexic people are, when they go into the pathway of entrepreneurship, they're able to carve out a huge chunk of the statistics for successful entrepreneurs. It's also the same because, I was speaking to someone and they were saying that the statistics don't support it aren't there for leadership, but actually the truth is it is. One of the things I remember when I was working on in academia is one of the universities I worked in was about kind of bringing down the barriers in the workplace. And actually, statistically speaking, there are 2 sets of neurodiverse people, technically 3, but 2 sets of neurodiverse people that you'll find in executive leadership. That is 1, dyslexic people, and 2, people who are quite low on the autism spectrum, but they're enough to have that very particular personality autistic people have, right? And it's just because we don't know enough about the full spectrum, and we don't know enough about things, and we don't get, we all don't get assessed for autism, right? That we don't know that we're not autistic in nature. So the point I'm making here in terms of how we get employers to be respectful of what we do, I guess that's something, for us here at the African Dyslexia Organization to lobby for, right? To lobby for equal rights in this sense, equal rights for people with disabilities, and for hidden disabilities to be appropriately respected as a disability. Because it's not just us, there's all the hidden disabilities are not respected well enough in most of society. So it's for us to do that. Employers are people. So again, it goes back to what, the advice I would give to children. Remember, adults aren't always honest. Employers aren't always able to cater for our needs. The best thing that we can do to ourselves is recognize that initially, so that when our manager doesn't understand why you're always late, meanwhile you're dyspraxic, which literally means you have a poor command of time and space. When your boss doesn't understand why you keep breaking things, you're dyspraxic. That's why you keep bumping into the wall, walking straight into the glass. Your brain thinks this is an empty space. It's done the maths wrong, right? Same with being dyslexic. You're just not the report person. But you can read the report, you can analyze the report, and you can make sure that you can lead a team to write one of the best reports ever. But you're not the person sitting writing. So once you acknowledge what your flaws are and you acknowledge the nature and culture of your working environment, then you'll have to navigate how to work in it. This is Earth. We have to navigate how we live on this planet all the time. But wherever you can, as early as possible, disclose it. Disclose it in the best way you can if you feel safe. Because actually, for most parts of the world where there are things in place for us, facilities in place for us, we actually get penalized for not disclosing. So I've had many a friend who knows they're dyslexic, who knows they're dyspraxic, who knows they've got dyscalculia, take up a great job, not tell anyone, and then when their boss is trying to fire them for being constantly late, or you keep breaking this, or you or you're making lots of mistakes, then they'll call me and say, Tanisha, I'm getting fired, but this is my dyspraxia. Why don't you just tell them? Because once you've disclosed it, you can actually sue. This is environments where you even have rights. You can sue. So if you imagine, you still have to disclose where you have rights. So you should try and learn to figure out and navigate where to disclose where you don't. And where you have rights means nothing. Many people in the UK and in the US, the moment they disclose that, because remember, these are people that we work with, and those people are going to be honest with themselves. They just don't know how to deal with us, so they don't want to, right? Because when you disclose, you could also lose the opportunity. So I say, don't put the onus on some random recruiter who's also at work trying to make money for their family to suddenly magically understand us. try and communicate with them and try and work with them, because more than likely you're going to have to teach them how to even work with you in the first place, because just because we're all dyslexic doesn't mean we're even the same kind of dyslexic. So that's what I think when it comes to recruiters. I think sometimes we can put a lot of responsibility on other people where those people just don't have the capability out of the box, but they are capable of learning and learning to adjust to us if they're interested in it. And if we, again, on the other side, like I said before, we also have to be good enough to good communicators. So even if we're just saying it, we request meetings, we're doing regular updates, we're updating in time saying, thank you for this. I can already sense that I'm going to be late with this report. And I'd like to find out if there's anyone available who has some spare time to kind of help me out with certain aspects of it, because I'd really rather we didn't miss the deadline. Just be very clear and transparent. It's always people. And if the person that you're talking to is being ignorant enough or closed-minded enough or arrogant enough to not understand that in your early disclosure, you're actually trying to keep things on track, then that is not an issue with them not understanding your learning disability. That's just an issue with poor leadership practice. That's what that's an issue with. So, you know, that's what I've got to say there. Because the best policies and laws aren't going to make people do it correctly. They still have to genuinely want to do it correctly. And I think Surama was saying that very earlier on in terms of the schools. Just because these people are teachers, like some people are teachers, doesn't mean that they know what to do. And some of them really do need to be guided. So yeah, so that's my kind of thoughts there. I hope I've answered the question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You have. And what I would also add to it is the future is now. When it comes to the future of work, it is now. And day in and day out, there's new trends coming into companies. Now, DEI is so high, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it will catch up with every organization very soon. If you do not take into account to be inclusive in your organizations, you are going to lose certain talents. Imagine if naturally dyslexics are creative. All of us sitting here, Surama is at TIS, but Surama can decide tomorrow that I'm going to open my private studio and start my private business. Then Surama, the corporate environment has lost her. She's gone on her own journey. So imagine if all of us decide that we're going to start our business, just like Tanisha, just like Aaron, or just like me, then you are losing some very critical talent. So being inclusive, add that value to you. When I visit schools a lot, and I always say that TIS is one of the schools that I really love. Also, Aaron, because they have this system where the learning is very experiential, and I will thrive there. A lot of our students will thrive there. That is a bonus for these schools. So how about you being a company deciding to be inclusive so that you make accommodations, adjustments for our neurodiverse people who you are working with? So I just want to send that message out there that the trend is changing. It's not going to be traditional forever. And when we say companies, schools are included. Schools, very soon, some of you have on your website that you are inclusive, but you are not. They come there and there is nothing that shows that you are inclusive. Very soon, you are going to lose students to the schools that are putting support, accommodations, and have the patience to engage students like us in place, and you will be losing students. Anyway, let's start wrapping up. Let's address this question over here. And this question says, based on your experiences, what advice can be given to governments in Africa in relation to assisting dyslexic learners? Are our governments doing enough? Of course, no. If they are doing enough, we won't even have this conversation in the first place. But what do we think? And Surama, you can touch on it briefly. Aaron will touch on it briefly, and then Tanisha, you will touch on it briefly, and we'll start wrapping up our conversation for today.
Mm-hmm.
Surama,
so you want Aaron to go first?
I
was muted, yes.
Surama, okay.
Well, thank you for that question. But let me tell you, when it comes to government and schools, we really have a lot to talk about, a lot to address. But to start with, we need to start from somewhere. If governments, can support schools in Africa, want to have the understanding around dyslexia, we need to have the understanding, and we need to provide the schools, the parents, the children with the testing. We need to test them, and it's not something you see or you hear about. Testing is very expensive. Teachers, when you talk dyslexia with teachers here from local schools, government schools, even some private schools, they look at you as if you are speaking some Greek or Portuguese, but they don't get it, and there's already a misconception of those children or adults who have the signs, whatever, all the things we're talking about dyslexia. So I think is the understanding, supporting the teachers to, we need to have workshops, we need to have funds to train these teachers, we need to create awareness, intensive awareness to support them, even to affect the companies, as we're saying. The industry need to understand the most creative people are among the dyslexics, so they are losing a lot if you now discriminate. And I can see here easily someone saying I'm a dyslexic, and because of lack of understanding, we put them aside. But governments, let's begin to create awareness, understanding. Teachers must know learning challenges or the various ways of learning need to become a very open conversation among educations, and government needs to really open the door to that. I think, in a nutshell, this is what I can say. We need to reach out to them.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And we go to Aaron. Aaron.
I think he's also muted.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. So based on that little tour that we took when we went to those different schools, the 3 or 4 different schools they went to, and listened to the educators, what the government has to do is just have to acknowledge the fact that we are out there, that dyslexia is an issue that they need to address. Anytime you're trying to get people to buy into a system, buy into a government, you got to speak their language, I guess you could say. And for us, it's just acknowledging the fact that our children, we're different, and having the government to acknowledge that. And then at that point, you can put policies. Again, I'm not a politician, I'm not a government person or whatever, but at that point, then you can let's just have the conversation. Government, let's acknowledge it. Let's talk about it. Let's have the conversation. There's many educators out there that are super passionate about, teaching, and they see the struggling children that are in their classrooms. They know that there's it's more than just them being lazy or whatever it is. Let's get the government to acknowledge what these educators are saying, and let's fix the problem. But that's what it is. It's just getting them to identify, saying, okay, we hear you, we get it, we're going to do something about it. Simple as that, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you so much, Tanisha.
So for my contribution, I want to read something, okay, as to why and how and what we might start thinking about to say to government. So this is on this is a quick thing. I tried to share it a few times, but the headline just says, people with dyslexia have the skills to future-proof the workforce, research claims. In a report published by the consultancy Ernst & Young, Ernst & Young used data from the World Economic Forum and charity Made by Dyslexia to outline how dyslexic people's skills aligned with the skills that would be required in the workplaces of the future. And I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, there was actually a major neurodiversity report, actually strongly, heavily advising companies to increase their neurodiverse employees. So it says, referring to the World Economic Forum's prediction of which skills would be the most in demand by 2022. So this report was 2019. Ernst & Young's report highlighted how certain capabilities were becoming more and less useful to employers. So things like the need for processing and manual capabilities like time management, reading, math, and all these things are on the decline. Meanwhile, creative and social skills such as leadership, analytical thinking, and technology design are increasing in demand.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the skills typically seen in people with dyslexia that will be vital to people, to all industries by the year 2022. That was what was being said at the time. So when we look at what we should say to governments, when you're speaking to governments, and when I guess when you're speaking to people who are left-brained and love to write words, you kind of want to get the point across, if you can, the point across to them that you kind of want to get the point across to them about how good it is for the organizations, for revenue generation, for the economy, for the country. You want to go that left brain route because they're not the creative thinkers, right? So you don't want to talk about how it's not fair, because life's not fair. Their life might not be fair. You want to kind of go down that path. I think if you go down that path, you're more likely to be able to have conversations and bring people into a space where they can understand why they should take the effort to make a change, because change is very difficult, especially when you're asking someone else to go through the change management process on your behalf. So I would say, look at the data, look at the statistics, look up the information, be prepared for people to argue with you if you're going to do a government, but kind of stick at it, because fundamentally speaking, that's the point, isn't it? The point is that we can't have everyone that thinks in the same way. And dyslexia may or may not be is a disability, but it's also a feature of the neurodiverse world that we live in, and we must have neurodiverse workforces.
Absolutely. And if you are interested in the EY report, I have just put in the link in our comment section, and you can just click on it and it will take you to the report, and you can download it and look at it in later on. Thank you all for sharing your views on this subject.
Rosaline, sorry, can I just add something? I think we need to look into assessment, how we assess students also. We need to change the way we examine them, assessment in terms of exams. It's one for everyone, and that going forward, the world, we need to change that completely. And I like the way the International Baccalaureate is bringing the e-assessment, students sitting in front of the computer, and they're able to engage with the content to write their exams. And I hope in some few years to come, we are no longer writing the same paper for a whole cohort, a class of 80, 50, 60 students. It has to stop. We cannot all deliver in the same way. We can't have one exam for all. So governments, especially government schools, need to look at that. I look at the rooms, WASE children, over 1,000. Everything is about true and poor. True and poor, it doesn't work for dyslexic people. We can't. I remember having to recite a poem in school, and I have to be training that for 6 months. And when I get to stage, I can maybe forget half of it. So you are now telling people to true and poor. They are failing the exams, and then they're dropping out of schools. So that's another thing for us to work on our policies. And
fantastic. Fantastic submissions. And she's so right. We need to look at how we examine children, because if you put a dyslexic learner and you ask them the question, they can tell you the answer. Very fantastic ones. And we it's like you presenting them problem and asking for the solution. But the fill in the blank questions don't work for us, our mind. And so we need to look at all this side. And I will have something to add to what the governments can do. And when we refer to the government, that means we're referring to our ministries of educations and the education services. What we can do is, and something New York is doing that is beautiful, made by Dyslexia, have this training on dyslexia. And now in New York, every teacher in the K-12 level is mandated to take dyslexia training, training, an introductory into dyslexia training, and it is mandatory. If you don't take it, you're not a teacher in New York. And I feel it is good. What you're doing is not to make every teacher a dyslexic teacher, like a reading specialist. But what you're doing, imagine having an introduction of dyslexia and related learning disability, and all teachers, for example, in Ghana or Kenya, takes that. Then it brings the compassion and the empathy out. And so the way we mistreat students even change. Parents also take the same training, and then there is a level of understanding of what is going on. Then through that, we can have really special people who will have passion for the work and be like, we want to be reading specialists in these schools to support.
Yeah.
Another thing I'm also suggesting for the ministries of education is that it will be prudent for at least every school to have 3 reading specialists in their schools. One in the very, very, very kindergarten level, then one in the middle where it is like the primary to JHS, and then one in the high school. If, for example, like TIS who have from primary to high school, you can have that. If it's from primary to JHS, you can have at least 2. Even if you don't have at all, you need at least 2 in this school. So if you have a school and you are here as a private school, do not wait for the government to put down a policy requiring you to do something. You can start now. Position yourself for the better. Position yourself for the future. And the future is not far-fetched. The future can be just tomorrow. And so start preparing yourself now. Invite us to come to your schools. Invite us to even have sessions with you virtual. And all this group can come together and we can speak to your teacher, parent association. Don't do things and it's just teachers when it comes to concerned students. Don't do things when it's just parents. Put them together and do things together. These are, for me, what I will suggest that some schools can take immediate action now while we wait for what the government can do. But I can tell you for Ghana, the new inclusive education policy, we have one that is old, which is from 2015, and we just reviewed it. And Africa Dyslexia had the opportunity to be part of the technical review team to review the inclusive education policy. And so some of the things I am telling you on this platform right now are some of the suggestions that we have given. And we are looking at taking that same to go into other African countries, because when you travel on the continent, you realize that our issues are what? Almost the same, and we can work together. The Africa Dyslexia Organization is here. We are ready to work with you. You have these beautiful people, Surama, Tanisha, Aaron, all of us are part of the Africa Dyslexia Organization. We have Dr. Anupma, Dr. Bernard, everybody, Helen, like we have a whole team who are working to support you. Just reach out to us. I would mention that December, we are bringing back the Dyslexia Stakeholders Forum. We had it for the first time in Ghana, and it was wow. We are bringing it back. So schools, start reaching out to us. It's just 300 CDs for you to get your ticket and prepare yourself for the 11th of December. Fantastic speakers are coming. So reach out and come. We have so many questions and we have so many comments, but we can't take all of them tonight. This conversation definitely needs to come back. And so we'll find appropriate time and regroup again and continue. We'll save most of the questions and address them later. But there is one important question that is burning on my heart. And I want us all to address it before we leave. And you're going to address it in conjunction with your strength and then address the issue. So the question is going to be like, do you all think, because I've had parents ask me, one thing we're struggling with is stigmatization. When it comes to our cultural context here, they think the word dyslexia is an illness. Some think it's probably a disease, so they don't want to associate with it. Some think it's a medical condition that their children need to go and take medication for. So I want to find out from you, what are your strengths? And do you think dyslexia is a form of disease or an illness that need medical attention? Surama.
You know, dyslexia is not a disease, but it can actually make you sick. Let me just explain. It's not a disease, but in the system where we are in, you find a lot of children with dyslexia because of anxiety. They have ulcer. Because of anxiety, they develop a number of things. But dyslexia in its own, it's not. It's a neuro something, something. The name is big for me. And there's a condition. And for what I have read and understood, is genetic. It's mostly, it runs through families. But I also read something which I want to read more about a brain, something to do with your brain and stroke, or a particular time where you can have something happen to your brain and then you can't develop that, which I'll read more about it. It's not you don't need medication, you don't need a treatment. There's no surgery, in your brain to now correct that. That does not exist. What dyslexia is a condition that all we need is to be given the different tools and the right tools and the right platform to learn. All we need is to be given the opportunity, the time, to do things, to bring out the best in us. And I think your other question was, what are our strengths, right? Okay, talking about me, I'm a visual learner. I can watch you doing something and I'll get out of that room and I'll replicate that. I don't need to read anything about what you're doing. Just do it. For example, my mother used to marvel. My mother was never a good cook, but I can go to my grandma's house and my auntie's house, see my grandma cooking. My father's mother was a great cook and my mother just hated cooking. So I'll go to her house. I can't read the ingredients, so I cannot really understand the measurement. I see her doing meticulously. I get home and I baked cake. I was 11 years old. And my mom could not understand how this girl can go there, see her grandmother cooking, putting things together, and she comes home and she's reproducing that. So the strength is we are visual learners, we are creative, we are very empathetic people. And I see that in my children, my daughter, my son, my husband. We have this, because we have walked in the shoes, we quickly spot children, people who are struggling. And parents tell me, "Oh, Mrs. King, you pamper the children." People, when they don't know me, they think I just cover up, pamper the children. I make things too easy. And when they get to know me, they're like, she's actually, very firm, but very loving, because I have walked in those shoes. So my ability to see it from a different perspective. And also I tell parents all the good things their children have. And they're like, "Oh, but this is my child you're talking about?" I'm like, "Yes, it's because I have been there. We are empathetic, we're visual learners, we are caring, and then we are problem solvers." So, okay, I'm saying about me. Yes, I can see a problem or listen about a problem, and I'll begin to tell you what it is. And Tony says something so powerful, and I'm so grateful she have touched on that. She said that she makes a lot of spelling mistakes, but she's able to proofread, to find the mistakes in people's works. Till today, people don't understand. Ms. King, how you are dyslexic and you are proofreading. We just finished a publication for our anniversary, and I am one of the editors. And I'm always so humble when I see my name there, because when it's fight, light, might, tights, I can't spell them. Thank God to computer, text, typo, corrector, whatever, artificial intelligence. But let me tell you, if you ask me to write right now, give me a text, it's going to come with so many errors. I need time to edit my own work. But I can read somebody's work, a personal project, 4,000 words work of a student, and I'm assessing a student. And every time I'm able to work on somebody's work or give assertive feedback, it really humbles me. Yes.
Awesome. And Aaron, please, can you share your strength? And do you think dyslexia is an illness or something? I'm intentionally hitting on this because I've heard so much about, like, some parents, sometimes they will call me very nice. They want to find out solutions, and they go and assess their kids. Their kids happen to be dyslexic, and they stop picking my calls. It's like they want to block me because they feel like, "Oh, I've made them discover that their child is sick." So I want you to touch on it and touch on your strength.
Sure. Well, I think one of my strengths, and I think you guys had hit it on before. I'm a master delegator, and the reason why I'm a master delegator is because, I don't want to waste my time figuring out, like, I'll figure out the big picture and then let everybody else kind of fill in the blanks, fill in all the little things that need to get there. So for me, I'm very good at analyzing exceptional people. I have exceptional people around me that are 10 times better than me at many, many, many different things. But they can't speak to they can't go into a meeting with Elon Musk and not be frazzled, like I would have to do. So my team was built with a lot of individuals that were super intelligent, guys that made me, ladies that made me look like I know what the hell I'm talking about. And half the time I knew what I was talking about, but I knew I was talking about because of my team. So for me, it's in leadership, I see the big picture, and I'm a big picture. I'm a big leader. I'm a big visionary person. I'm not in the weeds. I don't get in the weeds. The weeds is for someone else. And I always make sure I identify and can identify those individuals that love to get into the weeds. Now, my team might not like those individuals because, they don't like, how they process things or get that information. But for me, I just want the information. I want it my way. I want it done a certain way. And I pick my team that can give me that information. So one of my strengths, again, being the master delegator and the big vision guy. I know that came from me being dyslexic. I know it because I have all these million ideas in my head, and some are crazy, just like out there. But I don't care because it's about coming up with a solution, figuring out what the problem is. And, I make sense of it when it's all said and done. It makes sense to me, and I try to make sure it makes sense to that. That's one of the questions. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you? That's like a phrase that I use all the time. Do you understand? And I try to make sure we speak a language that we both can communicate with. Now, you asked me a question about do I think it's an illness? I've been told so many different things, and in my opinion is, and again, I'm not an expert, a neuro specialist or whatever it is. I've been told that it's a learning disability. I accepted that fact. If it's a sickness or an illness, typically there's medication for sicknesses and illnesses, and I've yet to find a pill that helps me spell better or understand words better or be able to like write a couple paragraphs without having to go back and make sure I didn't miss a few words. So I'm just going to assume that it's a learning disability. It's not a sickness. It's something that you have to adapt to. You have to learn how to process to where it makes sense to other people, because to me, it always makes sense. It always makes sense to me. It's just putting it down on a piece of paper to make you understand. That's what my challenge is. So an illness, I don't think so. I don't think so. And again, my strength definitely is the big picture, the big visionary person, and then getting the right people to fill in the blanks.
Absolutely. Awesome. Tanisha, you muted.
Sorry, I was making some notes for myself. Make some notes. So one, is it an illness? No, it's not an illness. As far as I'm aware, it's not an illness. I was trying to find a particular meaning that someone had told me about a very long time ago that I don't feel like I should say until I find it exactly. But it was something about dyslexia being like dyslexia and its meanings. Because now that the interesting about the internet is that the more information goes into it, the harder it is to find the actual information.
Yeah.
It's so annoying. So there was someone that was teaching me, because at one point I was really interested in trying to learn Latin. And we were talking about the word dyslexia, and he was talking about how really the kind of concept of the words, of the word dyslexia from a Latin perspective means on one side, just not good with words, but on the other side, dyslexia is related to the laws as well as to do with learning, and the dys is to do with the negative. So it's really about the fact that the way that the dyslexic mind works goes against the laws of learning, right? So basically, the point I'm going to make is no matter what we look at and what we don't find that it's a health hazard issue that requires medication. We do consistently find more and more information sharing about how it's a difference in ways that thinking is done. And that's the key. So it's not an illness. However, I think Surama said it perfectly. It does cause illness. Like there are many people who I feel physically sick at the thought of having to speak to, because I know that they're just gonna left brain me. They're gonna left brain me. In fact, what I now have as my curriculum, which is called, the Laser Entrepreneurship Bootcamp, was originally called, and I still have those prints, originally called the Right Brain Business Planner, because I was just making such a point that this is a business planning tool for people who are right-brained, not left-brained. So, it does cause illness because it makes people shy away, makes people very anxious, physically sick, at the thought of yourself, and the disappointment that you have, and then the disappointment you don't want to give to other people, the constant defense. Because, the other thing about, interestingly enough, about people who are not neurodiverse is for some reason they always need the neurodiverse people to defend their neurodiversity. Meanwhile, throughout this whole session, we've spoken quite clearly about how poor we are at explaining it. So it's not a sickness, but it can cause such a large amount of emotional distress that I would not be surprised if it was also one of the high up there reasons for depression, or at least triggers for depression amongst people. Then in which case, if people are at the point of something else, they would possibly be on medication for that, right? Because they've been taken to that point. But out of the box on its own, dyslexia is not something that requires any sort of medication. So no.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I so much agree. And you wanted to kind of, I don't know if you done, but you wanted to touch base on dyslexia, what it means. And
Yes.
Dyslexia is a Latin word, and I don't know why he chose that why he chose that word, but it's a Latin word that the dys means difficulty, and the lexics is word WORD, so simply means difficulty with words. In Latin is dyslexia, and that's how the word was adopted. Basically, it's a reading, learning, spelling difficulty. It has nothing related to do with medication. The brain is wired differently. There's a lot of study that has been done over the years trying to find to pinpoint what the causes of dyslexia is. They haven't been able to do. And it makes sense, guys. Look at our fingers. It's different. So what it means is, that's why in life we have short people, we have tall people, we have medium people, we have whatever. We are all different. Some brains are wired differently to receive, process, encode, and decode information differently. And it's okay. And that's why we have 4 types of learners in the classroom: the reading and writing learners, the auditory learners, the kinesthetic learners. We have all these learners in your classroom. But if you use one medium of approach of teaching, then the person who is kinesthetic, the person who is tactile learner, the person who is just auditory learner, or the visual learner in your classroom may not get it because you are not practicing the well-structured, multi-sensory approach of teaching in your classroom. And that's why the experiential learning is very important as well. I see Surama wants to say something, and I'll call her soon. It's very important. So we need to find that approach and understand that the kids in the classroom, they are not the same. The adults in the workplaces, we are not the same. They might not know that some people might not know that they are dyslexic, especially in our continent, but they may be. And that's why organizations need to be aware of such discussion. And I'm hoping that those who are watching, you're not just watching, but this is a very long conversation. It has never happened that I will host an event over 1 hour. I think Aaron and I did 1 hour, 20 minutes, but this is almost 3 hours conversation. And if you should take this link and take it to your schools and take it to your organizations, and they will listen and even just watch this conversation alone. It's a whole awareness that is going to create. So don't keep the list with you. We are ending. We are wrapping up like in the next 5 minutes. But I give 1 minute. I give Aaron 1 minute. I'll give Tanisha 1 minute, and we will here. Surama.
Yes, I just want to add something to this. In this part of the world here, we also need to remind ourselves that dyslexia is not a curse. It's not a spiritual thing. there's a belief here that anything that is out of normal is because it was a curse or is a spiritual something, somebody has done it. No, it's none of those. It has nothing to do with that. And yes, so I just want to add to the illness part. It's also not a spiritual curse or, you know, something bad that is being put
Thank
upon
you.
the family.
Fantastic. Tanisha, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, no, I was getting to our strength just really quickly because I didn't get to finish
your
that.
strength. Yes.
I think that our strength, when our strength really comes from when we acknowledge our difference, and then we're able to start to thrive. I think that's really where our strength comes along. Exactly. So it's hard to get to that place as a person, to be different, see that you're different, feel different, be treated like you're different, and try and find strength in that difference. But I think when we find it, it's that ground zero that means that, you know, they say if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything, right? People say that about everything in day-to-day life. And I think that it's quite the same in terms of us acknowledging our difference. Like the moment we stand for accepting that we do think differently as individuals, and some of our differences we share collectively, but as long as the individual acknowledges and accepts that they do see things differently and are able to find confidence and strength in it, regardless of the negative comebacks of it, I think that's the beginning of a really thriving career as someone who's neurodiverse. So I just want to say that's the strength.
Fantastic. Okay. So if you look on your screen currently, the Africa Dyslexia Organization is conducting a research on the knowledge base of teachers in Ghana. And once this research is done, we will roll it out to every country on the continent so we can get data out of it. So if you're in Ghana or you're an educator or a parent, screenshot what is on your screen for the link and take it to your school, or as a teacher, please help us and send me your surveys. I'm also showing the Dyslexia Advocacy Fellowship starting March of 2023. We are looking for 2 people in each African country. So far, we have 100 and last night, just in 2 days of launching, we've had 104 people from 24 African countries.
Wow.
Some
Wow.
application already just within 2 days. We trust you, we love you, that you want to be part, but keep sending in your application. The research is very important to us. Please take a note of the link. Today I have been hanging out with Surama, a devoted experiential learning educator who have navigated through life's academics and professional spheres with dyslexia as her compassion, turning challenges into unique teaching methodologies that foster inclusivity at the TIS, which is Tema International School. Aaron, an astute global sustainability consultant and former Tesla Motors executive who is dyslexic, journey has shaped him holistically and innovative approach to sustainable practice, making difference around the world. And Tanisha Tego, accomplished enterprise education specialist who is dyslexic perspective, has been a guiding light in crafting educational strategies that is assisting businesses. And me, your host, of course, dyslexic, Rosaline, who is with Africa Dyslexia Organization, and I am a hospitality professional. I'm giving each of my panel members 30 seconds to share their last thought with you. Aaron.
You said 30 minutes? Okay. No, I just want to, Rosie, thank you for this platform. And you know, if people are listening to us, because we're 3 different people here, you know, with 3 different stories. Actually, say 4 different people with 4 different stories. But you know, if you're struggling and you don't know why, go get tested. You might as well. I mean, if you're struggling, your children are struggling, you know, go get tested. Let me tell you something. the day that I learned that I was dyslexic was one of the best days of my life, because the light bulb caught on and I got it. And now I'm moving forward with just trying to get the word out, try to spread it to everyone, the regular persons, the people who get it, the people who don't get it, just everybody. So again, Rosie, thank you. And you guys, it's nice meeting you all. It was a pleasure. I know we could probably talk for another 5 or 6 hours. But again, thank you for this. And I really appreciate it. I can't wait to do it again.
Awesome. And we go to Surama and we come to Tanisha.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for this platform. I am so happy to have met Tony, DPX, right?
DPX, baby. DPX, baby.
Aaron, yes, DPX, and Aaron and Rosaline, thank you so much. You're doing incredible. You are open doors for this conversation to happen across board, and I'm very happy to be proud of it. But overall, to everyone out there, after so much information and how much we have shared, I just want to say,
That's so cute.
I love that. I love that so much.
That's to end my part. Yes.
I love it.
Beautiful. I love it.
Thank you
so much. Thank you. Tanisha, how about you?
I just wanted to say, thank you so much for joining. I have really enjoyed seeing the chats and seeing the fact that across the world in so many different spaces, we have all managed to find shared experiences in something which for most of us is actually quite upsetting. And Surama even came to tears, as did you, Rosaline. And I don't think for a second that Aaron and myself weren't emotional about it. And a lot of people here talked about how emotional it is. So, I think, as they always say, misery loves comfort. So for me, it's been really refreshing to know that it's not just me. And I think that's really one of the key about having African dyslexia organizations, for allowing people to realize it's not just you. But, a big thing that we always will have to fight is the people who just don't get it, right? It's the people who just think it's something else, think you're being dramatic, think you're this, think you're that. And that is not our concern. So I just hope that from today onwards, anyone who has been feeling like it's just them, or that they have to babysit the feelings of other people, you do not at all need to babysit the feelings of other people. You also do not need to become a researcher. Just because Rosalind is interested in research doesn't mean you have to start doing research on behalf of other people who are too lazy to research on their own to understand what dyslexia is. However, where you can, you have capacity, you have interest, you have desire, please join us as ambassadors, as ringleaders, as conveners, as motivators, as mentors, as coaches, to anyone who would like to really learn how to support people who come from neurodiverse people, right, of all types. So thank you so much for joining today, and thank you for making it enjoyable for me.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much, and thank you to our viewers. Right here next week, same time, 6 p.m., we have a Dyslexia Global Conversation with parents who have children with dyslexia. Come and listen to their experience raising superstars who are dyslexic and trying to find a way to navigate through. So please make a date with us. Go on our website and find the fellowship, the Africa Dyslexia Advocates Fellowship, looking for 2 people in each African country, starting a fellowship in 2025 next year. Also put on your calendar the Dyslexia Education Stakeholders Forum on the 11th of December, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the British Council. Please, it's 300 Ghana cedis just to support the event for us to put it together, not making profit of it, but please start calling in to reserve for your teachers, for your husbands and wife. Please come in, reserve your ticket.
All schools should be there. Next year,
right?
Dyslexia should come to Tema International School. We are hosting you next year.
Yay! Awesome. And I just want to say a big thank you to my great guest over here, Tanisha, Aaron, Surama. These are all people who are part of the Africa Dyslexia organization. And I just love you. I wish I could hug all of you. I just want to say that what we are doing, at the end of the day, we just look for one person to inspire. But I know that this conversation is going to touch many lives and change different narratives. And so thank you. It bless your heart. God bless you. And viewers, thank you very much. But people, let's wait at the backstage. Let me end our live stream here. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. See you next week.